In the next 3 hours, I want to show you hundreds of little small fun facts about this lovely game called Old School RuneScape. In this video, we will visit every possible corner of this game and talk about almost every single activity it has to offer. Clues, skills, PvM, PvP, quests, trivia, history, the people in this game, drama, and much more. This is a collection of stories that I've gathered over the past year, and if you need a video to fall asleep to or just want the background noise, this is it. Let's get started. In August 11, 2016, there was a quality of life weekly update in Old School RuneScape that fixed a lot of the issues with tons of minigames, Last Man Standing, Fishing Trawler, Shades of Martin, and few others. In the bottom of the news update, there was a small change where the value of Barbarian Assault eggs was adjusted, and now they appear on top of the stack. This meant only one thing: the high alchemy value of Omega Egg was made bigger. And that became clear when players found out that the high alchemy value of Omega Egg went from 1 GP to 100 million GP with this update. Well, no harm done, because the only way to obtain the egg is through the Barbarian Assault minigame, so there is no way to actually high alch it. Not only that, but you can't even high alch it in the first place. The only way to turn them into gold is if you die with the inventory of Omega Eggs, in which case they would be 12.5 million GP each. As fate would hold, that's exactly what happened. I want to preface this that there isn't any actual concrete evidence like with most other stories, and this for the most part is an urban legend among RuneScape players. But there are tons of information out there pointing to this being one of the biggest code generation bugs in the history of this game. The most concrete theory for the egg smuggling was through the Trouble Brewing minigame and was called interface stalling. Now, I'm not gonna pretend like I know what I'm talking about, but the too dumb to realize what's going on conclusion is that you could stack different interfaces in Trouble Brewing minigame to stall the game. If you have an interface open in your screen, the game doesn't allow you to do most things. Then, using certain scripts and backend clients while having those interface stalls on your screen, you will go to Barbarian Assault, you will make a team, get that team to wave 10, and you didn't even need the Omega Egg, which was the completed egg that requires 5 players. There was another egg called the Yellow Egg in the final wave, and it had the same exact value, 100 million GP. Once a player in the team has a full inventory of eggs, they would collapse all those interfaces they gathered during Trouble Brewing, and the game goes as a forced teleport straight back to Trouble Brewing minigame. You would be taken right out of Barbarian Assault, but you would still have the eggs with you. Now, this is just a theory, but forced teleports are one of the most common bugs players have done in the past to smuggle items out. Once you have full inventory of eggs, you will go to the deep wilderness above level 20, where you had to spawn back in Lumbee, and since this was before the gravestone death mechanics, you would have approximately over 300 million GP left over. Because despite the value of the egg being 100 million GP, the high alch value was 12.5 million GP. And this entire scenario from start to finish took approximately 1 hour to complete. So technically, in theory, this was 300 million GP an hour moneymaker. Now again, let me say one more time, this was a theory and there is no concrete proof for it, but major bug abusers throughout the years have confirmed that the Omega Egg smuggle is one of the biggest downfalls of the Old School RuneScape economy. The simple fact is, Jagex changed the value to 100 million GP in 2016, but they changed the value back to 100 GP in 2021, so there was a 5-year period where players could abuse this. And if you can make 300 million GP an hour with this, imagine how much money you could print. It also makes sense why Jagex suddenly changed the value of Omega Egg again from 100 million GP to 100 GP few years later. Someone probably had abused this. They smuggled the eggs out and became filthy rich overnight. Konduit. Konduit used to be the go-to unofficial client for players way before Runelite came along, and it's actually one of the reasons why Runelite is so popular today. Back in 2016, it was a competing client against OS Buddy, and the beauty was that it was free versus OS Buddy, which required payments to use certain plugins. Not only was it for Old School RuneScape, but also for RS3, and it even had a similar interface as Runelite. It was the go-to client for players and the first version of something good. The downfall of Konduit started with the fact that it was just one developer working versus Runelite, which was open source and available to all developers. It also didn't help that just 1 year later, the only developer of Konduit got burnt out and sold this product to some unknown third party, which is believed to be the end of the client as we know. Reddit posts started popping up after it was sold that there is allegedly data breaches in the client, and any RuneScape player using Konduit might firstly get banned by Jagex and secondly get their account stolen. Everyone just kind of forgot about the client client that once was the #1 thing players used. There was so much potential for Konduit because it had a lot of the features you see today on Runelite, except it was already there 7 years ago. And maybe if Runelite didn't exist, Konduit would be the best option for old school Runescape and Runescape 3 players today. Okay, we have one final row left. I purposely wanted this to be the most obscure topics of Runescape, just to make sure that even the biggest fans of this game would think what these are. Let's start with the instant demo. Back in 2010, Jagex was desperately looking for new players, so they announced a new game mode next to free-to-play called the Instant Demo game mode. With this, you didn't have to make an account. You just click play now and the game logged you in. Players had 9 quests in total they could complete, half of the free-to-play map and about 10 hours of content in total. They had their own dedicated world, which was 901, and they couldn't access any other world like normal players. The maximum amount of money they can have on the account was 200k, and they were all Iron Man. The most fascinating part about this was how your progress after 10 hours of gameplay was saved to your computer locally instead of Jagex's servers. At the time, it seemed a very useful feature. You could try out the game without having to commit to it and see if you actually like it. Just jump in and start your adventure. If after 10 hours you didn't like it, that's fine. You can just move on. It was mainly meant for sites like Mechscape where Runescape was hosted, so new players can just try out the game quick and easy. If you already had an account at the time, it's very likely you didn't even see this instant demo option. It was, however, removed around the end of 2010 when Jagex was slowly striving away from hosting their game on different sites and instead focused on their own client. Kayzertief. This is a name for one of the bosses that could come with sailing. When you teleport to Winterdot in old school Runescape and run west to the abandoned fishing village, you will find one single character named Rakar. When you try to talk to Rakar, he just blabbers back some nonsense, and it's safe to say that Rakar has gone completely insane. According to the journal right next door, Rakar was left there and made an example for trying to destroy an ancient artifact. This artifact can also be seen in the fishing amulet, and it says that people who stay near it will go completely mad and lose all power. Rakar is a good example of that. But if you wear a round Myers-Nelm helmet, he opens up another dialogue option. He says that Kayzertief, who is beyond the reef, still remains asleep, pointing to the sea god. He continues saying that one day Kayzertief will save us all. This is very familiar in Runescape to someone called SOTE, who is also a mysterious entity from the eastern Killanor seas. If you break down the name in German, Kaiser means emperor and the Tief means deep. So by that definition, it looks like the emperor of the deep seas currently remains asleep. However, this even goes deeper than that. The quotes Rakar is saying can also be heard from Patchface. If you don't know who Patchface is, it's a character from Game of the Thrones books. It never made it into the series, but it's a semi-known character that constantly says, I know, oh, and repeats similar quotes when he went underwater during one of the chapters in Song of Ice and Fire. Patchface was on a ship lost at sea and supposedly went down. No one else from the ship survived. It's theorized that Patchface also died, but was brought back by the drowned god. Basically, he went mental after being abandoned, and that aligns with Rakar in Runescape as well. Now, the most logical theory is that Jagex is preparing for sailing, and Kayzertief could be one of the many bosses that will be introduced with the skill. The other theory is related to because this fishing hamlet was created by Jagex around the same time as they started working on developing Desert Treasure 2. And Jagex has already mentioned that they are not done with the Marjarat questline just yet. In any case, we might see a new god appear in the near future. And Rakar here, who has gone completely mad, might be on to something. Alt 0181. If you go to any text document or web browser, basically anywhere you can type on your keyboard, you can create a unique symbol by pressing down the Alt key and then typing 0181 on your numpad. This is called Unicode, and one time it almost destroyed the entire RuneScape. On February 25th, 2009, a bug was discovered where a single player would be able to crash hundreds of others with the same Unicode. By typing into chat Alt plus 0181, he will create a micro U character, and anyone who saw that character would have their client immediately closed down and the game would crash. The only way to avoid the Unicode crash was if you had your chat turned off. The reason for this was simple. The game just couldn't load out the micro U character in chat. and trying to figure it out had a complete meltdown which caused the client to crash. This method was abused by many players near the Grand Exchange, Duel Arena, Castle Wars and other popular places. You could literally make 200 people log out in the blink of an eye. The most notorious use for this was in the Bounty Hunter. Back in the day, after free trade was removed, the Bounty Hunter spot was the main PKing hotspot. So imagine a scenario where 100 people fight each other and suddenly all of their clients crash. If you were lucky enough and managed to kill your opponent beforehand, then good for you. But if not, well, someone just made you lose all your items. Jagex found out about this few hours later and made precautions until they fixed it. Players were asked to stay in remote locations and not go near popular areas until they look into it. Jagex also told all players to turn their chat off if possible. The three main activities for popular places were shut down. These were Duel Arena, Clan Wars and Bounty Hunter. Since this was on update day, some Jagex moderators had to stay in the office until 1 AM UK time, but the damage in the past 12 hours was already done. Unfortunately, this isn't the only case when typing something into the chat will crash the game for everyone. In 2023, Jagex added the rainbow chat to old school Runescape. Players soon realized that the same incident is occurring again. Typing the rainbow chat in public places will crash everyone around you. The problem was the same. The game just didn't understand what rainbow chat is, and instead of working it out, it crashed everyone who saw it in chat. And it only took few minutes for the news to start spreading. Jagex had to take down old school Runescape few hours later and disable the rainbow chat until they found a fix. The worst thing was that the advertising bots use rainbow text in TE. They spam every single word at a location where players are most likely to log in and log out, which made it impossible for some players to even attempt logging in. As soon as you log in, you don't even have time to turn your chat off. The client crashes immediately. The funniest part, however, is that since there are so many of them, so it was like a real life catch-22 situation. Nobody was escaping this. But Jagex fixed it, and as far as we know, there was no real harm done in this. Build 666. RuneScape is divided into different build numbers. This is called the RuneScape protocol, and every time a new update gets added into the game, a new RuneScape protocol is also added. For example, build number 1 was back in 1999 when RuneScape Classic was first created. One of the most famous RuneScape build numbers is 317, which is the old school RuneScape build in 2007 and was heavily used by private servers as a base client to build their server. Throughout the 20 plus years, the build numbers for the most part are just there to identify the period of time in RuneScape's history. But during build 666, something different happened. If you open up the developer console, it would turn red. And when the next update came around and the build number went to 667, it would go back to normal colors. This is firstly, of course, related to the devil and the number 666. But also, it's a reference to the Falador massacre happening in 060606. Few years later, Jagex also opened up the world 666, and their only information available was to bank all your items. The people who participated in this event were taken to a special event location in Falador just to commemorate the 06 Falador incident. Okay, we have one more topic left, and I intentionally left it as last, because while researching for this video, this was to me the most fascinating and interesting theory I've ever seen about this game, and it's called the scale theory. RuneScape is big, but it doesn't really look that big. I mean, you can travel from one city to another in a matter of minutes. In reality, City of Falador is supposed to be a massive town with enough houses to host up to 50,000 people. Yet when you enter the game and go visit Falador, usually there are only few houses in a city and about dozen or so characters. It also doesn't explain how players can run from Mauritania to Prifddinas in 15 minutes, despite the fact that it should take you weeks or sometimes even up to months to travel that distance. This is where the odd yet fascinating RuneScape scale theory comes into play. Essentially, it boils down to the fact that Gielinor we see as characters is not the real Gielinor. Imagine needing 3 days to travel from Varrock to Caterpie by foot in real time. You start your farming trip on Monday by the Varrock Castle and end it on Wednesday in Caterpie Beaches. That is supposed to be the real scale of RuneScape, but we don't see it. What we see as Gielinor is just showing the most important and relevant pieces of the world, but in reality, the fictional world of Gielinor is massive and something we can't even comprehend. But the scale theory is not only there to shrink down the surface of Gielinor, it's also there to create new locations on top of existing ones without taking up space on the world map. Good example of that is the Fishing Trawler minigame, where you see locations like the Gielinor Sea, but until sailing is released, there is no way to access that in any other way. In RuneScape 3, there are even locations that are not in the game despite existing in the Gielinor world.
like Lumford, which is supposed to be the bigger version of Lumbridge, yet we never seen this location in RuneScape. Lumford does exist in Gielinor, it's just not in the game. Because we do see the gamified version of Gielinor, there are also multiple fourth wall breaks that occur in RuneScape. One of them is when you're talking to a bartender in RuneScape and he says that the world around us is a computer game called RuneScape. He then goes on to describe a computer game as a magic box thing which can do all sorts of stuff. A really good quote from a gaming journalist said that not only this reveals that certain characters of the RuneScape universe are aware they exist within a video game, but this also highlights that our character is unaware what a video game is, meaning there is a difference between what we see on the screen and what's naturally occurring in Gielinor. This further supports the idea that the oldest elder god in RuneScape is called Yas, which could reference Java application server. This is the engine RuneScape is built on. And finally, by removing all of these geographical restrictions of Gielinor, the developers of this game can freely establish their own idea of Gielinor universe. Good example of that is Prifddinas. It's always been there. It's a well-established city in Gielinor, but it only ever came to old school RuneScape in 2019, because by that point it became a significant enough storyline in RuneScape that should be added in. And this goes for many other places in RuneScape as well. It's so much bigger than we actually see with our own eyes. So the next time you're walking around in game, you can imagine how the world of RuneScape is actually much more substantial in size and activity.
Let me show you how you can make your AFK fishing and woodcutting and mining better experience. Let's take something like Anglerfish, a good AFK fishing spot for decent GP per hour. Now there is a plugin called NPC Idle Timer and it works for fishing spots. What it does is approximately tell you when a fishing spot could change. The first thing you need to do is type in rod fishing spot into the plugin, and this is specifically for anglerfish. The fishing spots for things like infernal eels, sacred eels, maybe barbarian draining fishing might be slightly different timers and spots. And finally, you need to put in the first timer, which is 300 seconds, and the second low value timer, which is around 240 seconds. The second timer is when the spot could start changing locations. As you can see right here, the timer also goes red, indicating that at any moment the fishing spot will move very soon. But if you're lucky, you could run the entire timer to 0 before it changes as well. It's just a small indication telling you how long the timer lasts until a potential change could happen. And the same thing can be applied to woodcutting and mining as well. For that, there are already specific plugins made which are 3 despawn timer and Runelite Rocks respawn timer. The 3 timer will tell you approximately how long it's gonna take until the 3 despawns. And it takes into account all the other players around you as well, which is a nice tool for doing forester events with other people. And my final Runelite tip before we move on is this. During Soul's Pain Quest, one of the most annoying parts for me was identifying which monster is the correct one. But there is a Runelite plugin called Better NPC Highlight, and if you tag the ID of this monster under 1067, it shows you the exact correct NPC you need to attack every single time. In fact, this can be used in multitude of places. One place where players always struggle is the famous Bog from the Swampletic series, and how it takes such a long time to complete compared to every other event happening in this minigame. Well, just like in Soul's Pain, the Bog has identifiable tile every single time you enter, so you can just skip through it on your first try. And these are just simple methods. You can go as hard as, for example, identifying the Nylas in the room that are aggressive during your DOB runs. You can even set up the explosive baboons in Baba room with radius markers, or maybe even highlight the cracked boulder in Baba's room itself. Basically, every single thing in old school RuneScape has an ID attached to it. And if you find out what that ID is, it can make your life a lot easier. There are a few websites that I'm not gonna name which have almost every single NPC ID available, and there is even a plugin called Identificator, which after downloading you can hover over anything in the game and it immediately tells you the ID of the object or the NPC. So for example, this tree in Lumbridge is ID number 1278 and Hans is 3105. Okay, enough about Runelite features, let's talk about bosses. The next tip goes out to one of my friends who was struggling with the Song of the Elves final fight. But maybe there's something to take away here for everyone, because what I'm about to show you is a common game mechanic that allows you to dodge massive amounts of damage. The main thing players struggle is the final phase in the fight where you take insane damage for no apparent reason. But there is a way to neglect all of that damage, and here is how. Once you get to the phase where the massive damage is about to come in, you equip your Phoenix necklace
necklace and just 1 second before Seren attacks with a massive attack, you hit a Nightshade, which procs the Phoenix necklace and will neglect any damage taken from the boss. This is very forgiving. It seems like you're about to die, but trust me, you have like 2-3 seconds to react to this. Just pay attention when Seren rises to the air, and that's when you eat the Nightshade. And instead of taking up to 90 damage, you only take 15, which makes the fight so much easier. Keep in mind, for Iron Man you do need 63 farming for Nightshades, but this can also be achieved with rock cakes or locator orbs, and the outcome will be the same. Congratulations on completing Song of the Elves quest super duper easy. Okay, let me show you something fun. In Varrock next to the east bank, there's a gleaner who is sweeping casually, and if you drop ashes next to him, he will run up to those ashes and sweep them up. I tried this for like almost an hour to lure him over to the wilderness, but there seems to be a limit in where he can go before he turns back. To me, it looks like the gleaner has exact same code as the defender role in Barbarian Assault, where you also drop food on the ground and lure them over, because oftentimes the gleaner just ignores the ashes in front of him and just goes for the furthest one, just like during the defender role, but this time you unfortunately can't kill him. I also trapped the gleaner into a room and just dumped inventories of ashes on the ground to see if it would clean them all up. And to my surprise, he did. It took a little bit of time, and by the end, few of them despawned, but that's a good damn worker right there. In my previous video, I showcased that you can get tasks from Wise Old Man. You can complete those tasks and get rewards for it. Well, you can do that exact same thing with few other NPCs. One of them is the cooking skilled NPC, but for him, you only get tasks to make your own specific pies. Romilly over here asks you to make between 4 to 28 pies, and after completing your task, guess what? You also get rewarded pies. This guy is also briefly mentioned during Desert Treasure Tube, because when you type in his name into the golem, it says access denied. And if you examine him, it says a baker from the north, which is suspected that this guy is actually some sort of Saros warrior who is now in hiding. Okay, let me show you something ridiculous, which goes against the physics of the entire universe as we know. So here it goes. You can't use a vial of water on watering can to fill it. You can use bucket of water on watering can to fill it. You can also use vial of water on bucket of water to fill it. So by doing vial of water on bucket of water and then the bucket of water on watering can, you can use a vial of water to fill the watering can. Nothing makes sense anymore, and I don't know what is real. Moving on. While you have your bank open, you can use your F keys to open the bank's equipment screen. For me, that F key is F10. So when I press F10, it opens the equipment tab immediately, and I can just swap between the two to either gear up or look at my armor/weapons. Oh, and here's another tip. This is pretty much known for a lot of people already, but a good way to train your prayer is using demonic ashes with the demonic offering spell. What the spell does is give you 3 times more experience. The problem is that it requires wrath runes, which a lot of Iron Man have almost no access to. What you can do, however, is come to Fountain of Rune in Wilderness with only ashes, use them up for prayer experience, and then repeat the process. It's very similar to Chaos Altar and using bones, but the upside here is that there are a lot less PKs here, and furthermore, it's actually a lot cheaper to train your prayer here, even on main accounts. The ashes are cheaper to buy, and since you don't waste any money on runes, it's a good alternative to your regular bones to altar training methods. Now, I am using Wilderness Sword 4, which makes this so much faster, but that's also a very high requirement. If you don't have that, the best option is either Anakar, Teleport, or the level 50 Obelisk. Now, normally I love to add some cool trivia from the wiki to my videos because there are some insane stuff that nobody knows about, and just in the last month they added some cool fun facts that is basically unknown for you, for me, for everyone until now. But before we get into that, I want to give them a shout out, and if you have the opportunity, please go support them on Patreon, because I guarantee you during your gameplay sessions today, tomorrow and next week, you have the wiki open all the freaking time, and guess what, someone has to run that wiki. It's honestly the best possible source for information you can find, and the guys at the Old School Runescape wiki work really hard to make sure you have a better gameplay experience. And with that, they added a few awesome, very unique facts that not many people know, starting with these crates. Now, for the longest time, players thought that these were useless, but if you click enough times, there is a chance to find an uncut topaz from these crates at 1 in 1,000 chance. In fact, this can be done on basically any crate in Old School Runescape, and it took me approximately 10 minutes to find
find my very own topaz. This is actually a monumental change for Extreme 1 chunk accounts, and also accounts that have self-restrictions like area locked. There is now a way to gain topaz gems even outside Gramsha. The second one, and my personal favorite, is there was a task in Leagues 4 which requires you to make the trainer witch angry. But there's also an Easter egg where if you have a pot of flour with you while you make her angry, you lose that pot of flour for no apparent reason. This probably caused a lot of anger in day 1 of Leagues, where players tried to figure out why their ingredients for Cook's assistant kept disappearing for no reason. And finally, there is a door in Ardoin, which is one of the hardest things to open in old school RuneScape. Even though you only need level 13 thieving to attempt it, the chances to fail at that level are 99.3%. Even at level 99 thieving, you fail about 85% of the time. And the reason is because it might have the same code as the Desert Treasure 1 chest, where you need to bypass 3 different rolls to successfully unlock. And the same scenario might be applied here as well. Funnily enough, the door is automatically opened up when you're doing a mahogany contract. If you want to see more of these cool fun facts, go visit the Old School RuneScape Wiki's Twitter page, and please go give these guys some love, because they are saving lives out here with the banger content coming out that nobody knows about. With the release of Tombs of a Masked Raid, there was supposed to come a helmet that you get after completing Beneath Cursed Sands quest. When the helmet was in your inventory, it looked identical to Verak's helmet, probably due to having no inventory model. However, when you equip it, it showcased the actual model. The Hero's helmet, which was later named into the Lion's helmet, was initially supposed to be a tradable item, and the assumption here is that you can either check your raid scores, or it had a teleport option near Necropolis that you can obtain after completing the quest. It was put into the game a few months before Raids 3 came out, and just 1 week after it was removed forever, not to be seen again. Item number 2, the League Tomato. This orange looking tomato was meant to be an item used by Jagex moderators to test out the Twisted League back in 2020. It had multiple features, like the debug option to fix bugs inside League's game mode only. Later down the line, when Leagues 2 and Leagues 3 came out, Jagex added extra features for those leagues specifically. This item is similar to the other Jagex moderator tools like the Rotten Egg that can teleport you to any place in Gillenor. Then we have the Rotten Carrot that can ban any player with a single click. Then we have the Rotten Strawberry that works specifically for bosses and locations. Then we have the Rotten Cabbage that was specifically used for camera control, like you saw during Deadman tournaments. And finally, the most infamous Rotten Potato that allows Jagex moderators to do multitude of things like set stats, teleport, open banks anywhere, delete any item, see other players' inventory, and transform yourself into any NPC in the game. And it seems like Jagex moderators might actually bring the League's Tomato back this year, as we're getting closer and closer to Leagues 4. I guess we have to wait and see. By the way, if you made it this far into the video, consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this. That way it helps me know what my audience wants to see in my videos. Thank you very much. I love you all. Mwah. Okay, let's continue. Item number 3 is the Soul Talisman and Soul Tiara. Funnily enough, these items have been in the game for almost 20 years, but it was always unobtainable because there wasn't any soul altar in the game. However, in 2016, Arceus got a massive rework, and blood and soul altars were added into the game, but since you didn't need the Soul Talisman to enter the altar anymore, these items were removed from the game forever. To this day, you can still use the soul altar without the talisman, so it's safe to say that the Soul Talisman will never make a return. Next one is actually not an item, but rather than a place that you can't access. However, it's still in the game. When you use the games necklace to teleport to Bertop and you go downstairs to the castle, you get into the games room. You soon start to notice that there are 8 rooms in the games room that are completely inaccessible. They contain nothing but crates and barrels, but initially Jagex wanted to add more games into the games room, like warships, chess, backgammon, and even games like Go and Slime Wars. The games room was released 19 years ago, and unfortunately these other games I mentioned were never added into it. However, the rooms are still there to this day.
Item number 5. Free-to-play Starter Pack. Back in 2015, when free-to-play was released, another item called the Holiday Tool was given to live streamers, clan leaders and few other players to distribute free-to-play starter packs to new players. The Holiday Tool could only spawn around 200 starter packs per day, so it had a limit, and the starter pack consisted of a lot of beginner items to get people started with their journey. The current GE value for the starter pack is a little bit less than 2k, and it was just a way to celebrate the start of free-to-play. As far as we know, and the information we have available to us, this item actually never left the game, so there might be a few accounts back from 2015 that still have this item in their bank and just don't know about it, which makes it basically one of the rarest items in the game. Item number 6. This is one of the rarest items in the game just for the simple fact that I don't think anyone can obtain this ever. However, it's still in the game. Burnt pita bread. The reason why it's so rare is because you stop burning the pita bread at level 38 cooking. However, you can't actually cook the pita until you get 58 cooking, meaning you can technically never burn it. Players have tried to use a multitude of different methods to gain access to this item, like using diseases to lower your cooking levels, but the biggest problem is that you need to use a cooking range to get the item, which makes it impossible to obtain. This was also confirmed by Mod Ash later down the line that indeed, yes, currently it's literally impossible to obtain this item. Item number 7. This time we're actually talking about NPCs, not items. Back in 2013, Jagex hosted the very first Christmas event, and during that event you had to talk to 3 kids in Karamja and save them from a goblin. If the player had completed the event, they will continue to see those 3 kids in Karamja forever. However, if you never started the Christmas event, the kids never appeared for your character specifically, making this the first and the only NPCs in old school RuneScape that are discontinued. So, if you completed the 2013 Christmas event, you accidentally unlocked one of the rarest NPCs in old school RuneScape. Item number 8. There was an item called Fireworks, which was an unobtainable potion released with Snapdragon back in the day. It was intended to be a cosmetic potion that created with Snapdragons, and the secondary ingredient was supposed to come from Brimhaven Agility Arena that was released on the same exact day. Normal potions have one extra option, which is empty. This potion, however, had another option called Light, so essentially you needed to use a tinderbox to create fireworks. The potion, however, was scrapped for unknown reasons, but it is thought that the level up fireworks animation you currently see were initially used for this potion, and afterwards the animation was instead added to leveling up. Okay, we have 2 more items to go, and I say those 2 specifically for last because they're my personal favorites. Firstly, there was a telekinetic crab tablet. Yes, it was intended to be made just like any other tablet in your player-owned house, and it was a tradable item. It was intended to be used as telekinetic crab spell without requiring the use of normal spellbook, but supposedly it was too overpowered and Jagex decided to remove it from the game forever. And last but not least, we have my personal favorite discontinued item, which are the League's trophies. As someone who is proud owner of 2 Dragon trophies, these are considered one of the rarest and ultimately best discontinued items in old school RuneScape. No bias. You could only obtain these during the leagues, and specifically the Dragon Trophy was for players who were top 1% of players during leagues. Despite there being millions of old school RuneScape players throughout the years, it is currently estimated that less than 5,742 players currently own any version of Dragon Trophy. These trophies are mostly for cosmetic purposes. The only thing they have is a nifty animation, and ultimately it's there to just flex that you have no life. However, currently there are a total of 21 trophies for 3 leagues, meaning each league had 7 trophies in total, ranging from bronze to dragon, making all 21 items discontinued forever. LMS. Everyone knows how easy it is to make money here at this day and age. You don't have to be good at PKing, and it's also a perfect place to start PKing because you don't really risk anything. I spent about 3 hours in LMS today, and I'm not joking when I say that about 95% of my opponents were bots.
Occasionally I did find like 1 or 2 players who were trying to learn PKing, which kudos to you guys, but the bots were the real moneymaker here. They don't fight back except they have auto retaliate on, so you can just simply pray against that and kill them. Killing a single bot here is about 40k GP give or take, because you get 1 point for a kill and you also get bonus points for outlasting all the bots. There were so many cases where I got 7 points, which is the maximum you can get per game, and currently 7 points gives you almost 250k gold. One game lasts less than 10 minutes, so it's very possible to make up to 2 million GP an hour here if you just face bots over and over again, which honestly it's very likely right now. These scripts are so lazy that all they pretty much do is enter the game, go AFK and hope you can snipe points. Since it does take zero effort on the bots part, they're just basically printing free money. So take advantage of these bots while you can, but before you start picking out rewards for your points, make sure you check out the wiki page for LMS rewards, because they adjust the best point per GP. The safest 3 options you can pick are Magic Short Bow Scroll, which is 5 points, then we have the Dragon Pickaxe Upgrade Kit, which is 14 points, and the most common item people buy is Rune Pouch Note, which is 75 points. I noticed that these 3 items constantly have the best GP per point ratio, but there are other options out there as well, like glue boxes, wilderness scrap teleports, and few other rewards. Okay, now it's time to actually attack the beakers and make them lose money. I actually made a video about this in the past, and today I wanna go back and see if that method still works. I wanna know if bot makers are getting smarter, or is this still one of the best money makers in the game. Yes, the thumbnail of this video was correct. This is indeed literally one of the best money makers in the game, and it has minimum requirements. Firstly, I would recommend having an account between 70 to 100 combat. Nothing more, nothing less. That's because we're hunting revenant bots, and these bots usually range between these brackets. First of all, let me make it very clear. We're not here to PK them. We're here to just pick up free money. That's it. Last time I came here, the scripts were so basic, all they are doing is protecting prayer and trying to run into edgefill after I teleblock them. And by the looks of it, nothing has really changed. It's still the same principle. The bots run on a script that prays against your weapon of choice. So if I use crossbow, they pray range. If I use TDS, they pray melee. But when I use a magic staff like the Staff of the Dead, they think you're planning to mage them, but in reality you just slap them around with the staff, which makes the bot go to error mode, and it doesn't understand what combat style you're using. The only realistic requirement is that you need teleblock and the entangle spells, so basically 85 magic. To my surprise, this method works even better now. I'm not even joking, I made like 1.2 million GP in less than 10 minutes here. I just run to the cave, pick out any bot, and trust me, there are bots in almost every single world. Then I just chase them down for 2 minutes, pick up my 300 to 500k loot and go again. Currently this really can be up to like 10 million GP an hour if you get lucky with the bots, but you're almost guaranteed to get at least 6 to 7 million GP an hour with this method. And like I said, you don't have to be good at PKing. All I'm really doing is using teleblock, entangle, and then hitting them with my staff. That's it. Sometimes I throw in a few crossbow hits as well. And when I say that they're in every single world, I mean it. And there is even multiple bots in a single world. It's gotten so bad that the bots are now crashing each other because during peak times, there just isn't enough free spots to farm revenants. There was another player on Reddit that was doing this exact same thing, and he said that in a few weeks he gained over 400 million GP by just killing the same bots over and over again. He even adds that he just got kills only like 50% of the times, and he can't imagine how much money they're actually bringing in if this is only from one player. Imagine a bot farm that has 100 bots or even 200. It's an insane moneymaker for bots, and it could also be insane moneymaker for you. There is a silver lining here that every time I kill one of these bots, they do have to pay another 100k fee to enter the Revenant caves. So you win some, and I guess then you win some again. If there was one method I would recommend you try out, it would definitely be this one. It's easy to get right, it's tons of money, and very accessible to medium level players. To be honest, I would even consider making a new account that is just hunting these bots, because it would take like a week to build the account, and then you can have loot like this guy did, literally farming hundreds of millions of GP. Okay, let's talk about other methods as well.
One of my most favorite methods of hunting bots was around Air Obelisk. It is the most brain dead activity I've ever done, and somehow I found literally the perfect set of bots to farm me some money. So what's going on here is simple. We have 5 bots who are all doing Air Obelisk training / money making methods. All of them are gonna have like 25 to 35k inventories, and it's pretty straightforward. I teleblock and just kill them. The other bots are not teleporting away. They don't really care if I kill them because they just re-gear, go back to Edgeville and continue doing this over and over again. The bot script is perfectly capable of understanding that it died and understand how to come back, so you can basically do this infinitely. One inventory of this takes about 3 minutes give or take, and it's usually around 150k because like I said, one bot drops around 30k GP. Sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on how many air orbs they've done. And it's that simple. You bank your 150k, you run to the obelisk, you kill 5 bots, you bank your 150k and rinse and repeat. It's basically like 5 bots are farming air orbs for you, but you won't get banned. Instead, the bots will, hopefully. So instead of doing one inventory at a time yourself, why don't you kill 5 bots and do 5 inventories at the same time? You can make up to 2 million GP here, and again, the same principle applies. You don't need to be good at PKing, you just need to find 5 bots that are similar combat level to you. I did this for like a half an hour, and I think I made almost 1.1 million GP just looting these bots. It's a great place to start off your bot hunting adventure if you want to get a quick warm up. So this was super interesting to me, and one location that I was genuinely impressed with. First of all, I felt like the Runelite bots had so much better scripts compared to every other activity. They had one tick logouts, they chose their words very carefully not to overlap. It felt like an actual process instead of aimlessly writing 2 lines of code and hoping for the best. The most impressive part was when I finally managed to catch a Runelite bot, and immediately all the other bots logged into my world, and they have this sort of group mentality where they run into multi-zone and they just start ragging you. The entire purpose of ragging is to make sure that the bot who has all the Runelite doors can escape. They have looting bags, they have crossbows, dragonstone bolts, and it's like a well thought out process. I was actually quite impressed with this. Unfortunately, the Runelite bot did escape, and when I started attacking the bot who was ragging me, immediately backup came again. It was quite interesting to watch this process. And I know there are some people who are like, well, Kriibus, how do you know they're bots? Well, first of all, there isn't a 100% guarantee. Never is. But there are a few telltale signs like their usernames and their stats and their in-game actions. Initially, I think these were meant to be Salcano bots because they have exactly the stats required to complete Song of the Elves, but I think the script maker can just run any mining script they want, so you can see how they have like 20 million mining experience by just doing Runelite doors, and later on I started hopping worlds and found even more of these accounts. So it's like an entire bot farm setup only for mining. And this wasn't the only location as well. There is like 2 Runelite rocks in Ice Plateau, even more deep wildy. But I only saw like level 3 accounts there, so they might rotate this around depending on how they set up their system. Apparently there is a plugin in Runelite that allows you to track almost every single training method in old school RuneScape and how much money you're making per hour. I personally used it a lot to figure out how much my Slayer tasks are worth. It was a nifty tool to use during necreals to figure out how much I spend on runes and potions versus how much I make from drops. But I didn't realize how deep this plugin goes. First of all, it automatically tracks everything that goes into your looting bags, fish barrels, herb sacks, gem bags, and much more. So for instance, you can figure out how much money per hour is herbivore, a method that usually isn't done for money. Or maybe you're doing wilderness bosses and you need to find out how much money per hour Venenatis is for you. And this includes everything that's inside the looting bag as well. It even factors in all your weapon and armor charges into the profits, so you get the exact number you're looking for. Furthermore, one of the things I really like doing is star mining, and the plugin takes into account even untradable items like stardust and calculates that into gold per hour. Plus, it has a cool animation next to your experience drops showcasing exactly how much gold you made. In old school RuneScape, there are a total of 7 transformation rings, and their entire purpose is that your character will resemble some kind of object. For example, the Ring of Nature makes you into a bush. Fun, right? Since they provide no combat bonuses and in fact can't even be equipped, they for the most part serve no meaningful purpose. Until a few players found out that you can cancel bosses' special attacks with these rings. So a good example where these rings are heavily used is Arachnis during her spider gum attack.
In this clip you can see I use the Easter egg and the web stays on the floor despite me moving away from it. The ring completely cancels the special attack and saves me about 2 seconds. During 1 KC of Arachnis this can happen up to like 5 or 6 times, saving you extra 10 seconds per kill. This is a monumental time save for players who are looking to hunt clue scrolls or just want a pet. It is estimated that if you do this to perfection, it's up to 30% increase in kills. Now, I personally enjoy using Ring of Stone the most because it felt the best to me. This does require some skill, you have to be pretty precise because you have like 0.6 seconds to react, and if you miss the perfect timing, it doesn't really work. Like I said, I use Ring of Stone mostly, but all transformation rings work, so you don't have to spend 20 million GP to buy a ring of coins. You can just go to Diango and get the Easter ring, or the Great Ring, or the Snowman ring for free. Now, I only showcased this for Arachnis, but this does have so many different uses in so many different bosses. Let me show you another example where this might be needed. Welcome to Hespori, where the only real mechanic is the boss rooting you into the ground and you have to click away to free yourself. Well, once again, using the revolutionary mechanic from transformation rings, you can skip this entirely. Now you might be asking, why is this useful here? Does it really matter if you can kill Hespori faster? Well, yes and no. Number 1 is to prove that the ring tech works in more than one boss, which later on I am gonna show you other bosses as well. And number 2, there are actually a few speedrun combat achievements for Hespori, and saving those precious seconds could be the difference. For comparison, if you put the 2 methods side by side, you save up to almost 4 seconds per KC, which is a massive win if you're hunting for combat achievements. My favorite method for this, however, is Vorkut. One of the main reasons why players die here is because in one of the Vorkut special attacks, you are frozen in place, and a zombie bug is coming at you. If you use the ring at the right moment at the right time, you are no longer frozen and you can just run away. This has 2 uses. Number 1, you can just ignore the zombie bug entirely and keep running until it despawns. And secondly, once again, there are combat achievements involved with this. One of them is doing the perfect Vorkut KC and not taking any damage from special attacks, and the other one is specifically killing the zombie bug without using Crumble Undead spell. Also, every time I do a Vorkut, I get extremely annoyed when I click my Crumble Undead spell and I just blatantly take 60 damage to the face. The click box is so freaking small and I am old, which means my eyesight is slowly going away. However, with this ring method, I can completely neglect that. Now, you can run away like I do because I'm a bad player, but you can also run towards it and kill it faster, which again, it saves time. The idea here is that if a boss has a mechanic where they quotation mark entangle you, there is a way now to dodge that with the ring method. And there are so many bosses in the game that have this mechanic. One thing I've seen people talk about is Versik and the web attack, but I don't think you want to bring the ring tech here anyways. I would rather have that inventory spot for extra brew or restore. If you know what you're doing here, you should never get stuck anyways. And if you don't know what you're doing, this is one of the easiest mechanics to learn for DOB. Also, I tested it out in Skeletor Wyverns, and when I tried to use the ring, it said I can't use the ring while bound by magic, which makes me think this attack is coded differently than the previous ones, because the same thing happened when I went to try out Duke's Achilles. Exactly the same message popped up saying I can't use it here, which also makes me think that these two share the same attack mechanic. I haven't tested this out in few other bosses, but I know that Kriya Ra in God Wars has a stun method. I know that Vasa in Chambers of Serik pulls you in at the start of the fight. Also Slayer bosses like Abyssal Sire, Grotesque Guardians. I know during Nexus first phase there is a drag special attack that pulls a random player in and stuns them. And also this has been tested and confirmed that you can use it during Vasani Nightmare on the Husk spawn. You get unfrozen and you also neglect the attack. I found the most fascinating agility training method on Reddit involving your player-owned house and a lot of money. People have been asking for AFK agility training for a long time. How it works is pretty simple. First, you need to build a dungeon in your house. In fact, you actually need 90 construction to build your own agility course. But the good thing is you can use other people's houses to do this as well. And it also works for Iron Man accounts. Now, the very first thing you should build is Oubliette, an item you probably never even heard of. This is going to be your spawn point, Oubliette.
Sorry, I just really like saying that word. Then you build 2 corridors with 8 traps in total, costing you 800k GP. And finally, at the end of the corridor, you build a treasure room, and inside that treasure room, you build a Tox Hill, which costs another 5 million GP. Oh, and one more thing, you need to turn on challenge mode in your throne room, which I think is another 500k GP. This basically activates all the monsters and traps in your dungeon. And when you finally put all that together, turn on your protection from range and let the monster attack you over and over again. Each time you successfully go through the trap, you gain 20 agility experience. But the catch here is that it's very unlikely you will pass through all 8 traps, because unless you already have 99 agility, the chances of you failing traps are pretty likely to happen. And when you do fail the trap, you will spawn back at the empty oubliette at the start of the course. But since you have auto retaliate turned on, you will get dragged towards the monster again. So you just go around circles, spawn at the start, get dragged in, complete the traps, gain agility experience, fail and start over. This meta comes around 20 to 25,000 experience per hour, so obviously doing rooftops is twice as fast for most players. But the catch here is that you can leave this going for sometimes up to 5 minutes without touching your game, and it will still continue to gain experience. To me, it's kinda like shooting stars but for agility. Insanely AFK, still okay experience, but just takes a little bit setting up to get to work. There are going to be cases where you do complete all the traps and go through the entire course, and in that case, just run back until you fail and you spawn at the oubliette again. Usually it just takes another extra click to start over. Now, I did this with range-based monster, and I spent 5 million GP to build that monster. But what I've heard is that you can also do this with splashing, which just requires another player at the end of the room, and that is basically free. But I also didn't test it out with my other account, because by that point I already spent about 25 million GP doing trial and error for this method, and I didn't feel like spending another 12 million GP on a pond. So someone please do this also with splashing and let me know how it works. I recently did one of the most tedious grinds of getting 70 to 85 Slayer. I hate that grind, because to me there is nothing exciting about Slayer until you get to that around level 85 mark. At that point you can tackle Slayer bosses, the loot becomes so much better, etc, etc. But recently I learned that I've done one task completely wrong, and that's trolls. You see, I am lazy. I like to chill when playing RuneScape, and I think putting tons of intense effort into this game just doesn't feel right. So when I found out that you can Nightmare Zone Slayer tasks, I was over the moon, and especially Troll Slayer task. The key here is to pick the trolls on the list you already defeated during quests, and they give good Slayer experience while you put almost zero effort into it. The good thing about Nightmare Zone is that bosses like the Ice Troll King lose their special mechanic they had during the quest, so it just becomes a normal melee attacking monster. I bring Bracelet of Slaughter for longer tasks, I bring Bone Crusher for free prayer experience, since you do need 5 monsters in total. I also pick Count Trainer and Sand Snake as my final options, and then I just go in down. One troll task is about 35,000 Slayer experience in total with the bracelets, and it is the most AFK chill way to train ever. You gain prayer experience, combat experience, Slayer experience, and you literally put zero effort into it. I used to hate troll tasks, but now I just open up a movie, and after the movie is done, I magically have plus 35,000 Slayer experience on my accounts. Highly recommend. You know how the GE bots keep spamming and advertising their websites, and every time you put them on the ignore list after reporting, another one shows up 3 minutes later. I actually showcased in one of my older videos how you can use chat filters to ignore older messages, and it works pretty well, but they still pop up from time to time, so you're kind of forced to put them on your ignore list. And the problem is that ignore list can only hold 400 names, and if you've been actively reporting these bots every week, that list fills up pretty quick. Well, apparently there is an option to delete the names on your ignore list that get banned, so you free up space to put more bots there. This way it doesn't fill all the 400 slots, and since these bots for the most part do get banned daily, you can just keep putting them on your ignore list while the system automatically runs a daily process to remove the banned accounts from your list. Okay, you know what, let's do a quick fire round of few fun facts. Did you know that you can be killed during a random event, especially the Desert Treasure 2 surprise boss who attacks you anywhere? The interesting part here is that you do regenerate back your full hit points instead of actually dying, because all random events are safe areas. This also means that let's say you're in a picky situation, low hit points, poisoned, venom, or whatever. You can restore your stats to full if a random event does pop up that you need to complete somewhere else on the map. So in this scenario, after the mysterious figure killed the player, he just disappeared and the player continued with the mime event like nothing happened. Next one is in Grand Exchange. You can turn your ruby rings into Ring of Forging for 250 GP each. Just talk with Murky Matt here to complete the process, and in fact, Ring of Forging are now free to play items, meaning it's actually a pretty okay moneymaker for free to play beginner players, since you now get 100% iron bars from your ores. Next we have another new player tip. When making a normal account for the first time, make sure you click the box that you're a new player, even if you're not, because Jagex just implemented Adventure Bots, which gives so many different rewards for basically completing anything in the game. Runes, arrows, experience lamps, you name it. It's a great boost for a new account if you're planning to return to the game, and it just takes few minutes to obtain. If you're looking to get your miscellanea favor up really fast, forget about mining, woodcutting or farming. Instead, come buy the flowers from the flower girl and you can earn 1% miscellanea approval rating every time you buy some flowers. It is the fastest way to earn kingdom favor in the game. And finally, Jagex is often using the same assets in different storylines. So for example, using the Monkey Madness valve also controls the water flow in the Elemental Workshop. Or another example, the spiny bushes in Temple Trekking for the Bog event are also used in Lumbridge Swamp. They even give out the same useless stick to you. Or do you remember how you had to fill the crate with bananas during the Pirate's Treasure quest? Well, you can also fill a different crate with bananas in Ape Atoll and it counts towards your quest completion. My personal favorite double asset incident in Old School RuneScape is when you're thieving the chest in Fremennik, and they also somehow count towards the Ardoin Hemister chest diary task. Because as it turns out, both of them share the same ID for chests. So you can do one or the other, you will still complete your Ardoin diary task. And finally, there was a time where you were able to open the door in Artie Cloak Tower with the key from Ernest the Chicken quest, because the door was exactly the same asset until Jagex realized this and changed it. Well, that was fun. Okay, let me show you one last thing before we end the video, and this is especially useful for all the Ironman or people who just want to make some easy GP through either glue scrolls or implings. There is a way to make the process of catching eclectic implings automatic to a point where you only have to click on the impling once and it fills your entire inventory with the jars. And here's how you do it. As soon as the impling spawns, click on it and then immediately click on your progress hat. If you don't have a progress hat, you can get one for free in the Mage Training Arena. After you click once, click for the second time again to make sure the dialogue runs out at the same time as the impling would spawn again. The dialogue of the progress hat runs out, you catch the impling, and since this is what's called interface stall, you will automatically continue catching the implings as long as you click twice on the progress hat at the right time. If you don't know what interface stall is, the best example for this is opening up your bank while you're poisoned, and as long as your bank tab is opened, the poison will not damage you. You can run out the entire poison duration without taking a single damage, and that's what's called interface stalling. In here, it's pretty much the same example. The reason why this is faster is because you don't have the server delay of catching implings, which is 0.6 seconds. Instead, the server thinks you're always catching the impling, so it catches it automatically every time the impling comes up. Just click the progress hat twice, spacebar the dialogue, and repeat the process. Not only do you catch implings much faster with this method, up to about 150 implings more per hour, but you also don't need to pay that much attention doing this method. It becomes very automatic process. The best part is, since one inventory of eclectic implings are around 130k GP, this is pretty chill way to make firstly money, or secondly get some medium glue scrolls. Now yes, you can just do the old-fashioned method of spam clicking one spot and it works fine as well. But if you're looking for fast ways to earn implings, this is your best bet.
During the Eclipse fight in Borelius Moons, there is one specific mechanic on the boss that teleports you to the middle and you have to face the boss to dodge any damage taken. But There is a way to avoid any damage with one single item. If you remember, I made a video a few months ago talking about the Easter ring and how it allows players to stall any bind effects. This was specifically very useful during the Sarachnis boss fight. That same stall works during this demi boss as well, and if you use the Easter ring at the correct time, you are free from any bind effect and don't have to worry about the rest of the mechanic. Now take this with some caution, as it is unintended and will likely get fixed at one point in time, because essentially you can dodge most of the mechanic with this one simple trick, and I doubt that's what Jagex had in mind when they made this boss. Still, despite that, it's a fun little mechanic that takes advantage of the old school RuneScape stalling system. Also, keep in mind, during the same mechanic, the Eclipse boss can also be just entirely killed with the Crystal Halberd spec, which is another way to avoid the rest of the mechanic. And once the hit points reaches 0, you are taken out of the fight immediately despite the special attack continuing for other players. If you go to the Runelite plugin hub and use the detached camera mode, you can find some very interesting statues and places around Varlamore that are not quite mapped yet. There is this Chambers of Serik Olm statue just right out of Illus Fortis, and we can see 3 players fighting the Olm here. This could be a reference to the Hailstorm Mountain group boss that's coming with Varlamore Part 2, and the Olm is just currently a placeholder for that fight. Right next to it is a square grey block that kinda resembles Desert Treasure 1 Final Arena. You have 4 crystals on either side with all of their own colors, and this might be related to some quest or minigame that comes with Varlamore Part 2. On the next island over, we see a town called Aldarin that also comes with Varlamore Part 2, and the only meaningful thing currently here is the newest house portal we might get in few months. And finally, inside the Perilous Moons dungeon is a completely new section of the map, and it could be an extension to the Perilous Moons minigame, or maybe a continuation to the questline, as we all know the demi-bosses inside aren't really killed during our fights. So I'm really excited to see what Jagex is cooking up with this one. If you want to see all these places yourself, you have 2 options. Either go to the site osrs.world or download the Runelite plugin Detached Camera. There is currently a massive Easter hunt going on because apparently you can obtain these red tokens by just interacting with the environment around you. Like for example, killing a buffalo just outside the city will give you 1 token. Breaking down blessed bat bones into bone shards will give you another token. Digging at this exact spot will give you another token, or even just fishing for preems in the Perilous Moons minigame, which also has a chance to obtain the red token. The tokens themselves do not stack, however you can have multiple tokens if you use the drop trick, and it seems that you can only obtain 1 token per day. That's it. So if you already got your token from any sources, you have to wait until the next day to gain another one. Players are currently brainstorming together to figure out what these red tokens are for, and I'll leave a link down below for OSRS Crack the Glue Discord, where people have come together to figure this out. Okay, let's do a quick fire round now. There is a duelist near the Colosseum that could be a reference to the Path of Exile duelist class. If you wear cat ears while petting the dog, you will get a unique dialogue. If you talk to the curator in the Illus Fortis Museum, he will assign you a task to find all the beheaded statues in Varlamore. There are a total of 10 statues. If you enter the Colosseum and run to the back of it, there will be 3 cards all with their own dialogue. One of them will say "You shall not pass." There is also a character outside the Colosseum called Minimus, which is a callback to the movie Gladiator, and a character named Maximus. The Diomed offers a new prayer training method that can give you up to 2 million prayer experience an hour, making it in theory the best prayer training method in the game. If you go to the Sunset Coast next to the Hunter's Guild, you can find a hammer, iron bar and some anvils to smith on, which technically gives you infinite smithing experience for free. If you also make helmets, you can sell those back in the nearby store for some GP. In the Perilous Moon, you can play a minigame while fishing and align your fishing net according to where the fishes are going, which yields you up to 3 times more food than just AFKing the net itself. And finally, it took approximately 16 hours for the very first completion of the Colosseum, and the honor went to the player named Porkazard. Congratulations. Okay, time to get back to our regular schedule of fun and interesting facts that you might not know about. In the city, there is a pond that has a big fishing net spot. This is one of the only ways to get the AFK house keys because the pond spots barely move. If you don't know, you can use house keys to gain massive thieving experience and a chance for the rocky bed. It's a new thieving activity that came with Varlamore and is an interactive way to access the house, steal some valuables for money and then leave. What you can do is use this bond to stack up on house keys with fishing and then use up all the house keys to gain money and valuables. It is a great alternative to your normal thieving training. Plus, a little extra is that the big fishing net bond also gives you a chance to obtain clues, so you get 2 in a 1 deal. The newly released mixed armor set that comes with the hunter skill is a great way to upgrade your mid-level gear, as it offers similar range bonus to Black Dragon Hide. Plus, it has slightly better defensive bonus. And the best part is, each of the pieces also gives you strength bonus. That's why it's called mixed armor. The making of the armor itself is pretty easy. You come to the fur shop in the hunter guild, you purchase mixed hide base, and you add another fur on top of that to make the armor. For the top and the boots it's sunlight fur, for the legs it's fox fur, and for the cape it's jaguar fur. Not only does the armor work really good as an alternative to black tea hide, but it also works decently well with the new hunter spear. To make the hunter spear yourself, it requires 1 declog, 5 jerboa tails, and 5 hunter spear tips. Or you can just buy them from the GE, and they do work with Ava's accumulator as well, as they are stackable ranged item just like arrows. So if you're looking for a new mid-level armor set for really cheap that works both as a melee armor and ranged armor, try out the new mixed armor set yourself by grading it in Varlamore or buying it from GE. In the town of Camp Dorom, after completing the Perilous Moon quest, you are opened out to tons of new shops around the city that have amazing benefits for medium and new players. In the bar, there are few items that can be used to make money. For example, the Infinite Cider is 2 GP in the shop, but sells for 500 GP in the GE. In the same shop, there are also infinite stews and meat pies which heal for 12 hit points and are sold for 15 GP each. The rune shop has one of the few places in the game with low requirements that sells nature runes directly. The baked goods shop has access to garden pies, fish pies, and red berry pies, all used for either +4 boost in their respective skill or as a quest item. And finally, right next to the stores there is calcified rock spawn that gives you blessed bone shards, which gives access to the new AFK prayer training method I mentioned before, so make sure you go explore this city thoroughly, as it has so much to offer for medium level players. The new sulfurous naguas have an interesting buff with them where the blade they drop deals 15% increased damage against them, and since they can also be assigned on slayer tasks, they offer one of the best combat training methods in the game. Inside the arena you have options for infinite prayer and infinite super combat potions, so if you combine the sulfur blades, the slayer helmet, piety and super combat together, you can reach up to 120,000 combat experience per hour, which is one of the best training methods in the game. It's also a very decent moneymaker as the sulfurous blades sell for a good price. The Colosseum has a reward system called Glory, which after completing certain amount of waves in the minigame, you are offered this glory as a reward. Once you reach certain tiers, you will unlock new activities all around the city. For example, at 8000 glory you unlock new improved prices for the thieving activity, which gives you easier access to the houses and also more loot. At 12,000 glory, the Ring of Dwelling gives you a new teleport option, which takes you directly to the Colosseum. At 16,000 glory, the herb patch just west of the city is now forever protected. As the glory is basically your personal best run in the Colosseum, you would need to make it to about wave 10, depending on the invocations, to unlock all the rewards the glory system has to offer. The Hunter skill cape now works as a bank teleport just like the crafting cape. It has few seconds longer bank time, but if you're 99 Hunter and you go talk to the Guildmaster Apatura with the Hunter cape in your inventory, she will unlock Hunter Guild teleport to your cape. Not only is it good for getting faster Hunter rumors, but it works as a bank option without the need to get 99 crafting or farming. You can use the loot from Perilous Moon's minigame on the guide just nearby the chest for a chance to obtain the other Perilous Moon unique items. This activity is not profitable, as there is a high chance you might not receive any items at all. Players have reported back that they offered up to 10 unique items to the guide and received nothing back. But it's there just because certain people want to complete their collection logs as fast as possible, and they have the money to spare. Currently the cheapest item to trade out is the Blood Moon Helm, which goes for 500k each, and you have a chance to obtain the Blood Moon Tassets, which goes up to 4 million GP. So if you have some extra gold lying around, and we're talking minimum of 100 million GP, you can just buy the cheapest Perilous Moon armor from GE and come swap it out here for other pieces. Mod Jets. Probably the most infamous Jagex mod
moderator that has ever existed. Mechscape was junior content developer for old school RuneScape until September 2018 when he was dismissed from Jagex for gross misconduct of his powers. It all started during a Deadman tournament when all of the opponents of a PKing clan called Rot kept getting disconnected, and for some reason it was only the opponents of Rot, nobody else. Mechscape was a member of Rot clan before joining Jagex. The story kept going even deeper when suddenly Reddit threads started popping up saying they had been scammed out of nowhere even though their credentials seemed to be completely fine. Coincidentally, this also started happening to players who were rivals against the Rot clan. Something didn't feel right. So Jagex did an internal investigation and they found nothing. Then another Deadman tournament was hosted and the final location was supposed to be outside of Falador. Whoever had this information would have a massive upper hand in the final fight. Remember, $10,000 was at stake here, and to a surprise of nobody, Rot was the only team to figure out this location. And no, they did not figure it out themselves. The final nail in the coffin was the fact that Rot members had multitude of one-letter names in their clan. One-letter names are something so rare and valuable that it seemed very unlikely that so many of them have it. Unless those one-letter names were made available to Rot members by a Jagex moderator. People started piecing together all of these occurrences happening around the clan, and a single Jagex moderator affiliated with all of it, and it soon became apparent what was going on. Jagex did another internal investigation into Mechscape and found no wrongdoing, but at the same time they also gave back all the one-letter names to the original owners. It all came crashing down with the billions of GP he stole from players using his moderator tools. Despite not being involved with Rot anymore, he still used his Jagex tools to scam players. It is estimated that Mechscape took minimum of 400 billion GP from multiple players that on the black market at the time was around $200,000. But he made a fatal mistake, because Jagex can track everything through their system, and as soon as they started looking into the scammed accounts, Mechscape was fired on the spot. Not only that, it later came out that he also destroyed untradeable items like void pieces, fighter torsos, defenders, and it was just to ruin other people's accounts. It wasn't even for the money rather than power. Jagex sued Mechscape, and there was an investigation by the government. Rot clan completely disbanded him and didn't care about him anymore. He had to change his real life name twice just to stay anonymous. And he had all of his bank accounts frozen due to undisclosed income, which was allegedly the gold he sold on the black market. In 2022, the court case ended and Jagex lost. Yes, Jagex lost against Mechscape, but not because he didn't scam anyone, it was more so that Jagex fired Mechscape without notice, and that was against the law in UK. The TLDR was that the court couldn't determine whether Mechscape was guilty or not, and Jagex took the wrong approach to firing him. Furthermore, from the court documents it was found out that 69 different accounts were accessed by Mechscape. Some of these accounts were accessed via a cell phone that Mechscape had. Some accounts were accessed via the office Wi-Fi. You could track the location and the time, and the surveillance cameras at around these locations showcased that Mechscape allegedly stole £217,000 worth of items from other players. However, since his bank accounts were frozen, it is thought that he never saw a single penny of that money, and that was the story of the most corrupted Jagex moderator that has ever existed. King of the Skill, a temporary game mode in old school RuneScape where the aim was to gain most amount of experience in 24 hours of gameplay. The competition lasted for an entire month and every player could log into a dedicated world and compete with others. There were two categories, most amount of total levels and most amount of experience in every skill. In a sense, King of the Skill was the predecessor to Leagues, because just like in Leagues, the experience multiplier was times 10, every account was an Ironman, and after 24 hours of gameplay, your account was immediately logged out, and that was it. Of course, as we expected, Wooks won the entire competition with total levels, but the real controversy for King of the Skill came out few weeks after, when it turned out that most of the competitors had cheated to get to the top. Firstly, a lot of players used alt accounts to gain advantages in skills like smithing and fletching to seek out the stores for supplies, and using alts was against the rules, so they had to seek out those players and remove them from the high scores. Good example of that was players who were using alt accounts to find Seiya gang activity and managed to get over 20 million strength experience in 24 hours of gameplay. Or another example was picking up ashes from the ground of other players and making Serum 207 potions to win the herb lore category. Basically there was cheese methods for every single skill, and Jagex had to find out one by one which ones were real and which ones were not. The entire process was an absolute headache. Secondly, people who actually won the competition ended up also getting unfairly banned, because the system in place to detect winners wasn't that good. For example, Evonabi, a player who also was the first one to obtain the Dragon Trophy in Leagues 4, also won the King of the Skill for runecrafting and magic, until he got banned. Then Jagex backpedaled and removed the ban, admitting their fault. And this happened to many other players who were not cheating but got banned for cheating. Finally, after everything was done and dusted, the winners were announced, but another problem rose. People didn't get their winnings. In fact, some players had to wait 2 years just to get a lifetime membership added to their accounts. Here is OSRS stating that it's been 2 years since I won King of the Skill and I still haven't received my physical rewards. He also made a post 1 year prior and Jagex ignored that one as well. There was a Reddit post where a player waited 650 days to receive their rewards, and the only reason for that was because the Reddit post had enough upvotes. Then a Jagex moderator saw that and manually added the lifetime membership. King of the Skill, however, was disbanded forever, since it took too much effort for something that was supposed to be temporary, and the Jagex team just didn't have the resources to deal with all the cheaters and winners. When it registers. Since we already talked about one game mode, we might as well mention another controversial yet hilarious incident. It's 2021 and Deadman game mode is in full effect. Deadman by that point has had like 15 different events, and honestly for the most part it's been a disaster. From ex-Jagex moderators intentionally DDoSing certain players to the servers not being able to handle the loads, and since the prize pool was $10,000, there was a lot of money at stake here. So it's the 15th event in total and Jagex has promised this time to fix everything. Jagex decided to not host a massive final hour fight between clans, but instead the top 2048 players all fight each other 1 versus 1 until a single player remains. If a player experienced connection issues, they were immediately disqualified, so a lot of players couldn't even log in to participate in the final fights, and the players who could log in had insane lag to a point where they could move once every 5 or 6 seconds. The server was once again targeted by DDoS attacks, confirmed by Jagex later on. Peakers put hundreds of hours of dedication in the previous 3 weeks to make it to top 2000, and now they couldn't even fight for the final prize because the servers just couldn't handle it. And bringing all of that together got us one of the funniest clips of all time.
Off prayer, this could kill Manx when it registers.
When it registers, look, they know it's lagging! Look!
Is on the back burner now, needs to hit a VLS spec big. 17 gets his one back. Off prayer, this could kill Manx when it registers.
When it registers, mate! What the fuck? Look how laggy it is! The hit didn't even spawn! I can't do this today. I can't do this today, bro. I can't do this today. I can't do this today. I waited too long. I spent 3 weeks. I spent 3 weeks waiting for this. I did 14 hours, 16 hours every single day. I skipped the gym for this shit. Fuck! I lost 10 pounds for this shit. Damn it!
Furthermore, Jagex tried to recreate that finals again 6 months later, and even that event got DDoSed and was plagued by massive network issues, despite Jagex once again being confident that they have everything set up nicely. The entire event was an absolute disaster, and since then Jagex has officially disbanded the Deadman tournament in that format. The latest version of Deadman tournament was just for the most part for fun. The prize pools were given out randomly to top 25 players, and it is safe to say that we will never see Deadman in that format again unless Jagex decides to host a LAN event with offline servers. Day 1 boosted rates. There is an unsupported claim made by players, and some even call this a conspiracy theory, that the drop rates for uniques from new bosses or raids are increased on release day. Some people even extend that conspiracy to say that it only applies to streamers and content creators to pull players in and showcase all the awesome loot you can get really fast. Firstly, I would like to say, where can I sign up, because it definitely did not catch up to me. Secondly, it's actually not a conspiracy that much. There is some logic behind it. A lot of players are going to get the drops on day 1 just because of the massive amount of people doing it at the same time. It's the same thing when you see ultra rare third age drops on Reddit or YouTube videos, because usually players only show off the good loot, which makes it seem like everyone on day 1 is getting the drops. What people don't see is the thousands of players who don't get the drops. Still, a lot of players believe that Jagex is boosting the drop rates on day 1 to pull people in and get them playing. That was the third row of iceberg. Now we're finally getting into the deep end, and some of these topics are so obscure that even as I'm presenting to you this video, I have no idea how these were found out. Let's start with Desert Treasure Origins. Desert Treasure 1 origin story is one of the most fascinating things in this game's history. Back in 2004, RuneScape started getting more and more popular, which also meant Jagex just needed more people to work for them. This meant more developers, community managers, analysts, customer support, and much more. So during the summer of 2004, Jagex hired tons of interns through universities to work on smaller projects in the game like quests, minigames, etc. 3 positions were opened up for content developers, and Jagex said that we will give you absolutely free choice on what you want to work on. So you had 3 options. One was Monkey Madness, the second option was Throne of Miscellanea, and the final option was multi-part quest, which was honestly the only thing they had going for them. So the intern got to work, and nobody bothered him for an entire summer. When the QA analyst came to look what he achieved, they for the life of them couldn't believe what happened.
Firstly, when you log into the game, you are at the quest start point because that's where it starts, and he hadn't quite grasped that that's not how RuneScape quests work. Secondly, when you spoke to one of these bandits in the desert, he would say, and I quote, Allah Zamarak, turn into a demon and one hit you. And for some reason, it was felt we shouldn't launch this, ever. Or possibly talk about it.
The intern was immediately fired on the spot, but there was a problem now. Jagex had an entire quest worth of assets they couldn't use, and they were definitely not gonna throw those assets away. So another developer comes in and tries to make something of all of these assets Jagex has in their bank. And since all of it was put together rather abruptly, there are even now some odd instances of Desert Treasure that you might notice. One example is that the quest is called Desert Treasure, but you barely spend any time in the desert at all. Or how there are tons of one-off characters in the quest that never appear anywhere else in the game. And finally, the fact that the Majorat at the end of Desert Treasure 1 looks like a Noobs, which was actually an asset for the previous quest, and no other Majorat looks like that. So basically, Desert Treasure 1, likely the most famous quest in RuneScape's history, was put together on the back of some questionable choices. Mechscape. Like I mentioned before, the news of RuneScape back in 2005 spread like wildfire. Suddenly the game became one of the most popular MMOs in just few years. That also meant more revenue, which meant Jagex as a gaming company could start working on other projects. Their very first project, and the first time it was mentioned in 2006, was Mechscape. The way this game was described was sci-fi space game similar to RuneScape, and Jagex worked on this project for 3 years. Players were excited to say the least. But as with any new MMO, it takes sometimes up to 10 years to develop a full game. So it came as a shock to players in 2009 when Jagex said that they were just not happy with Mechscape, so they're gonna scrap some of it, but they're still working on the project, which is now gonna be called Stellar Stone, and that's their future sci-fi MMO. Players got to see even more concept art, which made everyone very excited. Players also had a chance to sign up for beta access on Stellar Dawn website, and you can definitely notice how the development of Mechscape was in full effect. Jagex confirmed that after 5 years of development, they are planning to release Stellar Stone somewhere around 2011. However, just 1 year later in 2012, Mod MMG said that the development of this massive MMO that was supposed to throw everything else to the side is now put on pause. 1 year later, Mod MMG said that they are looking to continue developing the game sometimes in the near future. But in 2015, the development came to a full stop, and Mod Matt K confirmed that Mechscape is put on hold indefinitely. He adds on top of that he managed to play in an early version of the game, and it was rather cool. You had a spaceship which you did research and build components to make parts for your vehicle. Then you could land on different planets, gather loot, blow stuff up, and so much more. It was supposed to be the next generation RuneScape, but it never came out. Rock climbing boots. Climbing boots are one of the most iconic boots in RuneScape, costing only 12 GP to buy. They were the perfect pair of boots for pures with 1 defense. They gave +2 strength bonus, which was the best option for low level peakers at the time. And the boots have always been in demand mostly because to get them manually, you have to go through a lengthy dialogue. Or you could just spend the extra money and buy them from other players. At this point, it's causing certain balance issues, because the item was meant for peakers. And if peakers can have good items without risking any money, that's a problem. So Jagex had had to come up with another solution. There was few ideas. One of them was to remove the bonus from the boots entirely, which just didn't feel good for the player base. Another idea was to make two versions of the boots. The climbing boots were meant as a quest item that gave no bonuses, but after you complete the quest, you can buy rock climbing boots which now sell for 75,000 GP. Everything was approved, and as with every update, an email was sent out to Jagex staff to let know the next week's situation. The normal weekly update happens. Few changes in free-to-play, a new quest, and changes to the climbing boots. It took only 1 hour until Riot started gathering, where players called this the worst update of all time. The problem was simple. All the current climbing boots in players' bank were turned into rock climbing boots, meaning if you bought climbing boots before the update for 12 GP each, those same boots would now have a value of 75,000 coins, which basically made few peakers literally billionaires overnight. Modmark tried to calm down the player base, saying there was only a handful of people who had over 1,000 pairs of boots, so in the grand scheme of things it doesn't hurt the economy. That turned out to be a lie, because as soon as the post was made, people started sharing boasts of them having more than 10,000 boots in their bank. Before the update, that value was 1 million GP, and now they have almost 1 billion GP. There was even a collection with over 400,000 boots, which was estimated to be around 250 billion GP. Imagine your bank value grows this much by doing nothing. This caused a massive suspicion in players, especially after a forum post came out saying that there is a rogue Jagex moderator who revealed the information to few selected players one day before the update. As with every riot in Runescape, things started to calm down, but the statement was made. Players genuinely believed there was some inside job that made few players very rich, and that statement has been carried through the ages until forever. There actually wasn't any proof that this was an inside job. It's all just players giving their opinions for the most part. What it did, however, is make a lot of players quit. Because imagine a scenario when you have 3 pairs of boots and you obtain over 200k GP. Your friend, however, has 3,000 boots and their bank value jumps up hundreds of millions of GP overnight. That was extremely demotivating for a lot of players and was just one of the reasons why the player base of RuneScape started to heavily decline in 2011. The Castle Wars Griefer. There has been a griefer in Castle Wars who purposely is trying to ruin every minigame for the past 10 years. This person has made his job to ruin the game for others. It is guessed that this person has a serious mental illness because he has made this his day job basically. He doesn't care about anything but just destroying the experience for others. When Jack expands his accounts, he just makes another one. He uses alt accounts to ruin the game for both teams. When he does get banned, he usually goes to Twitter to complain and ask for forgiveness, only to continue griefing after the ban is removed. Blowing up your own defenses, making the game one-sided from the start, griefing the barricades, and generally being a very toxic personality to deal with. Every single day for the past 10 years, he logs into the Castle Wars, starts a game, and ruins it for others. Usually I don't like to promote these sick individuals in my videos, but since this is a massive part of old school RuneScape, whether for good or bad, I feel like it deserves at least a mention. And that was the conclusion on the 4th row of the iceberg. We still have best of the best left, the most obscure topics of RuneScape history. Let's start with mint cakes. This is my favorite RuneScape story of all time that involves a lovely couple having sex and a cake in RuneScape that caused one of the biggest market shifts of all time. The girl in this story had an in-game name called Cake, and the joke in their relationship was that the boy was eating out cake, aka the girl giving oral sex. Also, just to spice things up, the boy would put mint candy in his mouth during that time. I promise you this will all make sense soon. The boy in this story was also known as a very good mercher back in RuneScape 2009, and it became this inside joke that the boy is gonna buy up all the mint cakes just for giggles, and it will be their personal story. He spent days and months just collecting mint cakes in RuneScape, and since this was for the most part very trashy item that nobody cared about, he was basically holding on to the entire market. Nobody else cared about mint cakes, and the price spiked from around 10k each to up to 8 million GP for a single mint cake. Because firstly, people thought that you can only get 1 mint cake per account, which you got after finishing the Path of Glory quest. There was also a second option to get mint cakes through a gnome restaurant, but it was very rare. So this boy was holding on to the entire market of mint cakes, and when the time was right, dumped all of them and made massive amounts of money. Everyone thought he was the best mercher in RuneScape for pulling off one of the most ridiculous market manipulations of all time. All the merchants were confused why was this item so popular and why it went up in price, but little did they know the shift in market happened because of one couple's sex life. PAFT. aka Personal Area Force Teleport. In Runescape, PAFT is when your character is teleported into another player's personal area. If you don't know what personal areas are, Jagex made Runescape into small sections on the map. You can actually look up each individual section on OSRS.world, and every time you click on something, whether it's a quest dialogue, raids, bosses and so on, the game places you in your own personal area. Once you leave this area, the game deletes it immediately. PAFT comes into play when the area isn't either completely removed yet, or the game thinks you're supposed to be in that place. Good example of that was the Song of the Elves quest in old school Runescape, when during the Arthurian Castle cutscene, the upstairs castle wasn't properly mapped. So when you click the stairs, you would appear in other players' cutscene, and there would be tons of overlapping. Other example in the original Runescape was when players would team up in fight caves to obtain fire caves. Multiple people ended up in the same personal area, and everyone could attack the monsters in fight caves. Now, PAFTs can be fun and harmless to mess around with, but it also can be used to smuggle out items the players shouldn't have. Good example of that was dungeoneering. Players could go into instances, take all the items, and then just leave. Or maybe using the Class 5 dagger from Stealing Creation minigame, which was at the time one of the most powerful weapons in the 12 arena. This weapon was never meant to be outside and just used in Stealing Creation. So in conclusion, PAFTs are taken very seriously by Jagex because it could absolutely destroy the game, and developers have to double check every update to make sure there are no leaks the players could abuse. 1 trillion GP. For the first time in the history of old school Runescape, a player managed to accumulate 1 trillion GP and then Jagex banned that account. It all started from a streamer named PTS, who was a well-known deathmatcher in old school Runescape community. Deathmatching is when two players go head-to-head in predetermined rules before the fight starts while staking a certain amount of money. It ranges from 1 million GP up to billions of GP. PTS was very good at this one activity and managed to grow his bank billions every single day. He even live streamed all of this to showcase the legitimacy of his method, which for the most part was just getting the first hit on a deathmatch due to game mechanics. This oftentimes led him getting over 60% win rate over other players. For 7 months, he live streamed all of his stakes, and on September 2023, he was the first player in old school Runescape to obtain 1 trillion GP back. To put this into perspective how much money that is, on the black market it currently would be roughly around $150,000. The only problem with having this much money is trying to move all of it from one account to another without getting noticed. If you wanted to accumulate this amount of in-game wealth through bonds, you would have to pay Jagex approximately $500,000, giving you roughly 90,000 bonds. You can sell these bonds for 11 million GP each, and that gives you around 1 trillion GP. That's how ridiculous this amount of money is. So it came as a big shock to the community when one day the account couldn't be found on the high scores. Speculation started immediately and it was clear. Jagex had removed the account for real world trading. PTSC himself said that he was just doing giveaways, a thing he's been doing for a long time now. If you check through his Twitter history right now, he does giveaways almost every month. Modaiza responded back saying that it's very clear on Jagex's end that someone was accessing your account and using it to trade hundreds of millions of GP. At the end, even if you didn't do this, you are still responsible for your account and what happens to it. PTSC responded back with a 20-minute video of his own, and without going into too much detail, it's a lot of people just telling their side of the story. Jagex stood by their word and kept the account banned, which made PTSC the first player to obtain 1 trillion GP and also the first player to get their account banned with 1 trillion GP. These days PTSC is mostly promoting gambling sites through his Twitter account, which I guess you could say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But you can't deny that achieving 1 trillion gold is a remarkable feat that I doubt we'll see again anytime soon. Trade Octagon. This was a project made in 2005 when Jagex had one of the most brilliant ideas that never came to life. The trade Octagon was supposed to become the stock market of Runescape. In here you can bid on prices, you can buy stocks of certain companies, see them go up and down. It even had a trade referee in the middle who brings order during trades. In Geldagrim there are 8 mining companies and the initial idea was the players could put their money on which company value goes up and down. Players could also work for the companies to increase the yield or the opposite. If you work for a company and intentionally tank their prices, they will prohibit working for that company again. The trade Octagon has a fascinating story behind it, where oftentimes the smaller companies get pushed out, the bigger ones take over, and it looks like a real stock market. This can also be seen during the Giant Dwarf quest, where the player has to help the companies with orders and eventually kicking out the Red Axe for breaking the rules of the Octagon. Although there are only 8 companies in the trading Octagon, there's actually hundreds in Geldagrim. Some companies don't even have a name, and the game update in 2005 was supposed to push out companies that don't profit enough and push in new companies to replace them. Some of the companies were even teamed after the beliefs, like for example the Yellow Fortune company only allowed female characters. Unfortunately, the Runescape stock market, which would have been one of the biggest updates in Runescape history, never truly came to life, but we still have glimpses left of what could have been. Opulant tables. I'm gonna summarize few years of events in just 30 seconds for the Opulant tables to make sense. In 2007, Jagex was having massive issues with bots and gold farmers. The kids used their parents' credit cards to buy gold on the black market, and the gold sellers stole the credit card information to buy membership on multiple bot accounts. Once the parents realized what little Jimmy did, they filed a chargeback on their credit card, and the credit card companies in return went to Jagex and were like, hey, Jaggy Baggy, stop whatever is going on here with the credit card frauds, or we'll stop allowing you to use our credit cards for your business. So Jagex was like, okie dokie, nobody is allowed to free trade anymore, which was a success in stopping the credit card frauds. But it also caused one of the biggest changes in RuneScape history. Now players needed some other methods to trade valuable items. One of those methods was using junk items, basically items that nobody cares about, like poisoned weapons, flat packs, Brutus shields, and so on. And that's where the Opulant tables came into play. Or I guess the flat pack version of that table. They were mostly used as junk items to so-called softer trades, because they required marble blocks and gold leaves, which means technically they still had value. Jagex was still not happy with how players manipulated the market with flat packs. So in 2008, Jagex added a new option for a few days where you can sell noded flat packs to Advisor Grim in Miscellanea. Not only that, but you can sell for an insanely massive price. You can buy the flat packs as junk items from GE for a few thousand gold and sell them to the Advisor Grim for over 100k per item. And since you can sell him noded flat packs, many players had thousands and thousands of these laying around in case they needed to trade their junk items. After the update went live, some players managed to obtain over 100 million GP in less than 5 minutes. And this went on for a few days until Jagex quickly realized their mistake. Because back in 2008, the flat packs used to be common clue rewards, and the Opulant table flat packs were obtained from hard clues. So some players had thousands of these laying around in their bank from just completing hard clue scrolls, and they became filthy rich overnight. When it finally hit Jagex and they made changes, the price was reduced down to 10%. And furthermore, you couldn't sell noded items to Advisor Grim anymore. When the flat packs were removed as common rewards from clues in 2009, the moneymaker lost most of its value. But it's safe to say that despite the Opulant tables being one of the most obscure items in the game, it also has an interesting place in RuneScape's history. And that was row 5 out of 7. We still have 2 more rows to go, and these are creme de la creme of RuneScape history. The best of the best. The RuneScape Movie. Back in 2007, Jagex had a massive plan with RuneScape. They wanted to make tons of new games in the office. They wanted to expand the universe of RuneScape, and most importantly, they wanted to make a feature-length movie about RuneScape. It was supposed to be a live-action movie featuring the biggest Hollywood stars. Jagex even made polls in the official forums asking who should play the wise old man, and there was very interesting answers. Apparently, the most voted options for wise old man was Arnold Schwarzenegger, with Hulk Hogan being the second choice. I don't see what Hulk Hogan and Wise Old Man have in common, but it was 2007, a very different time. And of course, the sandwich lady should have been Angelina Jolie. Who else, honestly? The idea started in 2007, and there was news about it coming out in 2009. But at the end of the year, Andrew Gower said it's very unlikely we're gonna see a RuneScape movie. 2 years later, Financial Times reported that the new investors of Jagex are looking to cash in and are exploring the idea of RuneScape made into a film again. This time the lead would have been with the corporation Hasbro, who also made movies like Transformers, Dungeons and Dragons, and many more. Unfortunately, the idea also never came to life, and when asked about it again in 2017, Modmark said that if there ever was a movie about RuneScape, it would be something comedic like The Princess Bride or Stardust. One idea was to bring life the RuneScape quest Ritual of Majorat, which is in some ways similar to Desert Treasure 2 in old school RuneScape. This movie would have had insane cast of characters like Sanic, Wise Old Man, Lumbridge Guide, and so on. Few years prior, there was also talks with a Chinese movie company that specializes in making monster-style movies, and their idea was to make a movie from the perspective of cave goblins. In this story, the humans would be antagonists and the goblins would be the heroes. This was all heavily in talks with Jagex, and the idea was there, and everyone in Jagex wanted to make it happen. But again, unfortunately, it never came to life. We still don't have a full feature movie about RuneScape, but as we've seen with few other video game movies or series like Arcane, Arcane, World of Warcraft, Dungeons and Dragons, there is a market for it. So hopefully in the future we actually might see a RuneScape movie. Mounts. Back in 2014, Jaggers wanted to add another Killanor into old school RuneScape. Yeah, another Killanor. The initial idea was to basically make a new land the size of original RuneScape 2 right next to it. And that's where all the new updates would go, while the old original nostalgia content would stay in Killanor. And that's also where the ideas of mounts came into play. You see, in most games like World of Warcraft, mounts are a way to move around faster. But in RuneScape, there really wasn't any need for them. Most places are very accessible and teleports solve a lot of the issues with mobility. That, however, didn't stop players from comparing one game to another, and the idea of mounts still came up constantly. But now there was a reason. The idea is to add new massive landfill next to Killanor. Unfortunately, back then, old school RuneScape team only consisted of 4 people. That's it. But Mod Reach had a dream to make Seiya something spectacular. It was supposed to have multiple raids, factions, and a lot of other cool ideas. So he made a Reddit post one day saying, "Hey guys, would you like to see mounts? I found a way to do them, but the question is, do we need them?" Their idea was to be used mostly for mobility, and you couldn't do skilling activities while you were mounted. In fact, you couldn't do a lot of activities while mounted, and that's where the line was drawn. Despite showing that it is possible, it just isn't what people would expect from a companion. Not to mention that RuneScape is very tightly spaced, so mounts would just feel kinda off. And you could see that from the initial Reddit thread as well. It looks cool, but that's about it. Everyone running around with giant dragons would just become annoying at some point, and most players agreed that despite the idea looking awesome in theory, it just wouldn't work in RuneScape. And that's it, it was dropped forever. Seiya came out a few years later, and mounts were never mentioned again.
Did you know that there is a specific spot in Decay where you're affected by the swamp decay? It hits you for 1 to 3 damage every few minutes, and it can send you back to Lumbridge if you stay there long enough. The reason for this is because the hitbox for swamp decay from Mauritania is leaking through the river and affecting the dig site as well. Or did you know that there is a chance to get a skilling pet with 0 experience? This is only possible for the thieving pet, aka Rocky Boy. The way to do that is simple. You go to Sorcerer's Garden minigame and entering Winter Garden, which requires 1 thieving level, you get farming experience, despite this being a thieving activity. This will give you approximately 1 in 10,000 chance to obtain the thieving pet, which on average takes around 170 hours to obtain. So if you ever wanted a skilling pet with 0 experience in that skill, this is your chance. Did you know that there used to be an LMS duplication glitch where you can win every single game? You see, back in the day, LMS used to be available in every single world. So 24 players entered the lobby, each paying 100k GP. They loaded into LMS and climbed the ladder. Yes, when you climb a ladder, the minigame thinks you were out of the game, so when 24 players all climb the ladder at the same exact time, the minigame thinks there is 0 survivors left, kicking everyone out, and the winner at the time received 1.5 million GP. So this would mean all 24 players technically won the game and also won that money. This took only few minutes per run, and it was estimated to be around 2 billion GP per hour. Number 4, this is a good one. Ever wanted to join an old school RuneScape community? Well, this is your lucky day. We have opened up a community Discord server for all RuneScape players where we do monthly events, giveaways, and much more. For example, this week we're doing Boss of the Week, where the prize pool is 30 million GP, and the boss this time around is the Rat King. So come join us whether you want to participate in events or just find a community to hang out with. Discord link is in the description. Number 5. Just recently there was one of the biggest ultimate Ironman wipes of all time, where a player lost approximately 5,000 hours of progress on their account. When Duke's Killers came out, there was an AFK mining method near the boss that allowed you to go away from the computer for 6 hours while still gaining mining experience. This player used the method and accidentally moved his cursor away from the mining spot, causing him to move to a dangerous area nearby. When he came back, he saw his account near his spawn point and all his items were gone. For comparison, it would take the average player around 4 to 5 years to achieve all those items. The worst part is, this account already had 99 mining, because you can see the Mechscape in the loot pile, but the player just wanted to do something AFK while he was gone, which was his inevitable downfall. You can use almost any head slot item on the hat stand and it will give you a message back saying, "Oops, it fell off the hat stand," and cause the item to fall on the floor. Almost every tradable head slot item has the same dialogue, except for a quest item Ram Skull Helm, which has its own dialogue stating that it's too damn valuable to use on the hat stand. There are two ways to bring a melee weapon to Infernal Island. Number one is making your own battle staff from Celestra Spark, and the second option is using a Christmas cracker on another player to have a 1 in 21 chance to receive a black dagger. With the current prices of 500k each for a single Christmas cracker, this will cost you approximately 10 million GP to smuggle a black dagger to Infernal. Blackjacks can be used in PvP against other players, and there is a chance to stun your opponent based on how much hit points they have. The lower the hit points, the higher chance to stun, so technically you can bring 100 teammates to multi-combat and infinitely stun your opponents, leaving them helpless to move, eat or do anything else. There is a way to lock your character inside someone else's player-owned house, unless you teleport out directly. They remove the portal and there is no exit. All the rooms are closed off, and the owner of the house jokingly even sells teleport tabs for an insane price up. The only way to get out is if you brought your own teleports with you, or if you go to settings and under house options, you leave the POH. But if you don't know that, and your home teleport is on cooldown, you are literally stuck in someone else's house. Okay, this is my personal favorite. Did you know that by subscribing to this channel, you get good quality content every single week for the rest of your life? Well, now you know, so make sure to subscribe to not miss out on my next video. Mwah. Back in 2019, after Song of the Elves was released, unlike all the other weapons, there was no cap on how many monsters you can spec with the Crystal Halberd. This caused some insane experience rates, where people used a special attack on hundreds of monsters at the same time, gaining upwards of 1 million strength experience per hour. But this was quickly fixed when Jaggers found out about it, and they changed it so you can spec only 10 NPCs at the same time. Since we're already talking about Song of the Elves, during the trial cutscene for the King of Ardoin, the Agility Master can be seen on the Ardoin rooftop, watching down suspiciously. Nobody really knows why he's in the cutscene, as he serves no purpose for the quest. There is a sarcophagus in the Pyramid Plunder lobby that is closed, until you clear up the rubble from the Perderot Pop during a quest, and then the sarcophagus magically opens up only for you. The Dragonfall Helm originally was intended to be a reward from Vremenika's quest, and it was put together from two pieces, one obtained from Natisnot and the other from Yetiso. Unfortunately, this didn't make it into the game, and instead the Dragonfall Helm received a graphical update and was added few months later to Mithril Dragons. Near the rat pit, there are rat traps that can be filled with cheese, which will make a new item called a loaded trap, and any other account can take this cheese, which is one of the only ways to transfer infinite cheese from main accounts to Iron Man accounts. So technically you can trade infinite cheese to your Iron Man account, but please use this cheese method with caution. If you search for a very specific crate in the Goblin Cave, a chicken, rat and spider will pop out and everything in the area will start attacking you. This crate has its own unique ID, and what makes it special is that all the NPCs turn aggressive towards you. There used to be a same exact crate in Canifis. This time all the werewolves became aggressive towards you. However, Jagex removed this in 2014. You can try 99 crafting on Entrana without ever leaving the island. There is a seaweed spawn near the coast on northern side. Then you can use the range in the middle of the island to turn seaweed into soda ash. There is also a bucket spawn and sand pit right next to it, and also a furnace which allows you to turn your items into molten glass. And finally there is a glass blowing pipe spawn to make any of the glass products. So if you ever wanted to make an Entrana locked ultimate Giga Chad Iron Man with only 99 crafting, this is your time to shine. The Crystal Crown has a restock time of 250 million game ticks, which equals to almost 5 years. However, nobody will ever see it in game because all shops restock their items after the game update happens every Wednesday. But technically you can buy 3 Crystal Crowns for 750 million GP, and if there is no game update for 5 years, you will be the only player able to buy Crystal Crowns from this store. Armadale is gay. Yeah, that's it. I have nothing else to add here. I just thought you wanted to know. Armadale in the lore has had 2 husbands. One husband died of old age and the other died in battle. So according to the RuneScape 3 lore, Armadale is currently single and ready to mingle. If you log in on a very specific tile near the Padded Armor's church, a ghoul will attack you and knock you out. You will then respawn few seconds later next to the church doors. This only works when you log out, then log back in, and nobody knows why this happens.
In 2014 there used to be a no-clip bug in old school RuneScape that allowed existing players to get back to the tutorial island. By using flower mechanics and overflowing the game interface, the player continues to walk even on water, which is, by the way, approved by Jesus. Then they land on the other side where the island is, and they would have a full existing account on the tutorial island. This was also used to duplicate bronze arrows, since at the time you can technically get infinite amount of bronze arrows from the combat tutorial, which caused the price of bronze arrows to completely plummet to 1 GP. It is estimated that over 200 million bronze arrows entered the game every single day, until Jagex found out about it, banned all the accounts, and fixed the no clipping bug. If you have the average luck on your old school RuneScape account from start to finish, and you're trying to complete all the collection log tasks, not including the ones that will be added in the future, it would take you approximately 170 years to complete old school RuneScape 100%. Since new updates get added every year, it is safe to say that no player will ever be able to complete this game 100%. Sanaris is actually Gillenor's moon, so you are literally driving into space every time you go ask for a new Slayer task on your newbie Iron Man. There is an imp that spawns the northwest corner of GE, and its wander radius was never changed to account for the addition of GE, so it just gets stuck facing the wall forever and always. And finally, before Old School RuneScape came out, Jagex found 2 recovery tapes of Old School RuneScape in 2012. One backup was March 2007 and the other was August 2007. If we had gotten the March version, we would have missed out on so many items that we see today, like Piety, Dragonfire Shields, Dragon Full Helm, Void Helmets, Barbarian Fishing, Implings, Dark Bows, Dragon Arrows, Dragon Darts, multiple Lunar Spells, Achievement Diaries, Berserker Necklace, the Wilderness Stitch, the City of Torghast Khan, and few other updates that happened between those months. Yes, all of this entered the game in just matter of few months, so we're lucky that Jagex actually had a recovery build of August 2007 update, which is the old school RuneScape version we see today.
Lately I've seen a lot of posts on Twitter, Reddit and YouTube about how people get scammed in old school RuneScape, and it's making me worried that even in 2024 a lot of people are getting conned by other players. So I thought, okay, how can I help? And I went through multiple players who've been scammed. I also searched the internet for the most popular ones, and I decided to list all of them in this video for one reason, so you can understand them and not get scammed yourself. I highly recommend you watch the entire thing to make sure you don't fall for one of these scams, as you're gonna see later on in the video that all it takes is for you to turn off your brain for 3 seconds, and all of the items you work so hard for can be gone just like that. Furthermore, if you know about scams that are not showcased in this video, please consider adding them to the comment section down below so others can read them and avoid them as well. Now, firstly, nobody wants to admit they got scammed, but surprisingly this happens to a lot of people. You feel humiliated, how can you fall for this, you blame yourself, you blame Jagex, you feel ashamed. But don't worry, this happens to a lot more people than you expect, because A, it's literally meant for one purpose, to catch players off guard, and B, it's human nature to make mistakes. Honestly, we're really good at it. So let's start from the top. Number 1. This is one of the most common scams I've seen nowadays, which is the scammer asking you to download a Runelite extra plugin. It seems stupid, right? Well, it's all about social engineering. These scams take place mostly in raids lobbies, so Tombs of a Mascot lobby, Chambers of Serik, and so on. Oftentimes they have very high level gear, sometimes items like Mechscape, Full Torva, Twisted Bows, whatever to make them seem more trustable. They approach you and start with simple questions like, do you know how to raid? Do you want to learn raiding better? We can help you if you want to do a few raids together. After a few raids you get more comfortable and you now spend hours with these guys, so you jump into a Discord call with them, and sometimes these scams can take up to a few days or even weeks of social engineering. But after all of that, they earn your trust, and that's when the question comes up. Do you have a Runelite extra? Do you have Runelite Pro? Do you have this crazy good client with extra plugins? First of all, no such thing exists. There is only one version of Runelite and that's it. Side note, when you Google Runelite without adblock, the first option that comes up oftentimes is a fake site, and Google promotes this site, so please look out for that and don't download a fake Runelite that will steal all your info. Okay, so there is no such thing as Runelite Pro, but by now you and the boys have raided for so long and you feel like they're your friends, because for the past 2 days or maybe even weeks they have been sweet talking with you, trying to convince you that they just want to help. So you download the fake Runelite Pro client, put in your credentials, and unfortunately that's the end of your account. These clients are set up so they get all of your information required to hack your account, including your authenticator, bank pins, passwords, you name it. Once you download it, it's already over, so always be careful whenever someone sends you a sketchy link. Number 2. It's not only with raids though, they are trying to earn your trust any way they can, and like I said, sometimes if you have high value items, these scams take weeks to accomplish. Maybe at the start they just ask for simple things like, hey, I am at GE limit for this item, could you help me out? And I'll pay you back more just to ease into it. And weeks after small talk they ask you to download some crazy software that tracks all of the trades and helps you make millions of GP per hour. The end result for them is always the same. One unfortunate player made a thread on Reddit about this exact situation. He got scammed for 4 billion GP worth of gear, because even though typing all of what happened out seems so obvious, at the time he was very oblivious to this, and spreading awareness is the most important part of all of this. Number 3. Okay, let's talk about a few simple scams that are circulating the community right now, specifically in GE. One of those scams is this. Oftentimes people spam in the GE that they're trying to sell their bank for 10 million GP. Easy enough, right? They put up the offer and the value comes up to almost 15 million GP. That seems like a great deal. What they don't show is the one item in the list that has so much higher value than the actual price of the item. In this case, it's a picture that's few years old with a new potion called Menafide Remedy. The GE value showcases like 4,000 each, but in reality it's less than 1k each. So this trade in truth is worth only like barely 5 million GP, but the money the scammer gets is 10 million GP. This isn't the only item. There are multiple items out there that have much higher GE value than the actual price, and that often comes with new updates. And the reason is because Jagex doesn't want new items to spike too hard in order to protect the economy. Rest assured, when something is too good to be true, just decline the trade and go back to your grind. Number 4. The second GE scam I wanna show you is this. Let's say you're wearing a twisted bow in GE and someone comes up to you saying, I'm gonna give you 100 million GP if you trust trade this twisted bow to anyone in the game. Obviously what you can do is trust trade it to either your second account or someone who actually trusts, like a sibling or your best friend. You go back to trade the item over again, but meanwhile the scammer logged in with the exact same name where only a minuscule thing was changed, like making a lowercase I for an uppercase I. And while the scammer stands under you with a different name, the hope here is that your friend doesn't notice and instead trades over the twisted bow to them. Again, it seems very obvious in this situation, but all it takes is 3 seconds of turning your brain off, not correctly reading the name, and you could have lost the twisted bow forever. This is a very expensive scam, as you do need a bond every time to change your name, so this is more uncommon than most scams, but it does happen. Number 5. This is actually quick and easy and kinda funny. Someone comes up to you and promises you 10 million GP if you can answer a single question right. You think this is easy, no harm done, and you can just go for it because you can just Google any answer. The question is something like this. Who played the chimney sweeper in Mary Poppins? Very innocent question, you Google it and the answer is Dick Van Dyke. You type it out to chat and they log out. You go on with your day until you realize you've just been muted for 1 week because someone reported you for offensive language. Yeah, that's the entire scam. It could be any question, but the premise will always be the same. Though it might look innocent, they want you to say something that doesn't get filtered out, and it's an automatic mute for you. Number 6. Next one on the list is a popular scam that you might have also seen in Camp Q video. The premise is simple. They want you to wear an outfit for a video that they're doing and promising you to keep it. Usually it's full gilded worth millions of GP, so this might look very tempting. Deep down, however, this is a multi-operational scam involving sometimes even up to 5 or 6 people. They want to record the video always somewhere remote that has weird mechanics when it comes to PvP, like Fossil Island, Pest Control, Khazar Docks, Shazian Bank, locations that players don't know where the PvP line starts, so it's easier for the scammer to trick you. You follow along with all the steps they tell you, lower your hit points, wear your items, come to this specific tile, you already know what's going on, and you think you can anti-scam them, but in reality they want you to think you can get away with it, because they are already 4 steps ahead of you. You've been social engineered since the scam started like 15 minutes ago, and they want you to think you're smart and you can get away with this. They want you to pull out your gear to trust frustrated, they want you to compete against other quotation mark victims who actually are in on the scam, and the end result will always be the same. You step out on the PvP line and get one shot, losing all your valuables. To find out more about this exact scam, I highly recommend you go watch KempQ's video where he goes deep into how these people are trying to stay few steps ahead of you at all times. It's a really interesting topic and maybe it will help you avoid these scams in the future. Number 7. This is a similar scam but in a different location and under different circumstances, and it also happens near the Ferox Enclave. Usually the scammers drop an item outside the wilderness where the teleport spot is, so when you come from a Slayer task or if you're recharging your stats through the pools in Ferox Enclave, you see a shiny item just outside with your full gear and no players around. You go through the safety barrier and just then someone teleblocks you and you can't enter back to Ferox Enclave anymore. The concept is the same though. They want you to step over the PvP line with valuables so they can simply snipe you. Number 8. On the black market, there have been numerous occasions where players sell their accounts that have the silver player moderator crown attached to it. Sometimes these accounts can be worth upwards of $5,000. The reason scammers need these accounts is because when you see that silver crown in game, you immediately gain trust towards that player, because Jagex personally made them a player moderator, meaning that character is very trustworthy. This can go down a weird pattern where they try to scam you in multitude of ways, starting with something simple like not splitting the loot even though it was agreed upon, to even something like muting people who they don't like and using the same methods I showcased before to lure people out in PvP worlds. This is just a reminder that despite them having the silver crown in front of their name, you shouldn't do what they ask, and instead, if you see something suspicious, just report them and let Jagex take care of it. Number 9. This is a tough one because I know a lot of people are looking for friends when playing RuneScape, and oftentimes you're willing to bend backwards just to stay close with someone, even going as far as lending them hundreds of millions of GP. This oftentimes happens in Discord servers where players join up, start chatting, earning your trust, and then asking you to borrow them money, promising you to give it back as soon as they get a drop or something. Weeks go by, they still won't give you money back, coming up with excuses, and at one point they just basically tell you to stop bothering them and you're never getting the money back. This is all about trust, and if there is one thing you should keep in mind is that never trust anyone on RuneScape. That is the golden rule, and no matter how much it gets said by everyone, there's always someone who falls for these scams. Do not lend people money on RuneScape, because if you do, it's much more likely that you will never get that money back again. Number 10. Let's move to outside of the game and talk about those scams as well. I think anyone who has browsed the Twitch section of Old School RuneScape has seen how oftentimes there is a channel that personates a big Old School RuneScape streamer like Bodhi or Wooks, and the title usually goes like I'm quitting RuneScape, giving away everything, or Jagex is releasing a new update. Simple enough to detect for 99.9% of players, knowing it's a scam. But the reason why after years they still do it is because it works and it's still profitable. What they do is there is a link in the description of the stream, and once you click on the link they ask you to put in your email and password. Then they ask you for your authenticator, and if you still haven't caught on, they also ask for a bank pin, which Jagex never asks you for. The problem is these sites are identical one-to-one from the RuneScape layout site that it's almost impossible to see any differences, and by the time you do notice, all of your stuff is gonna be gone. Another thing with similar idea is email scams. Throughout years there's been few times where Jagex database has been leaked, and with that millions of email accounts are revealed to everyone. What the scammers do is they buy a list and send a very convincing email to all of those accounts. Again, like with any scam, 99% of players understand this. All you really have to do is take a look at the email account and it's immediately clear that this is not Jagex. For instance, look at this picture. It seems very convenient at first look and nothing seems wrong. Well, this is a scam. It's an email sent from a real world trading website, and this isn't even part of the leaked emails. This is just a user using the same email account on this sketchy website as they're also using for their in-game character. Another example, oftentimes Jagex does surveys to see what people like. At the same time Jagex pushes out their surveys, people also send emails like this. It seems legit. Do you want to participate in this survey? We give out $50 Amazon gift cards, and so on and so on. The best way to avoid these scams is if something is promised to you, like promos, free stuff, filling out surveys, just don't click on the email and instead just go to the Old School RuneScape webpage. Old School RuneScape has a fascinating side that not many players know about, and that is speedrunning. Whether it's bosses, quests, minigames, skills, or even clue scrolls, there is infinite amount of possibilities for getting the best world records out there. And today I want to showcase my personal top 10 list for the best speedrun attempts in Old School RuneScape. Please do keep in mind that as time goes on, most of these records will be broken. That is just the nature of the game. But as you're gonna see later on in the video, some of these records have lasted for years, and they are so fast that nobody even dares to beat these times. And with that out of the way, let's get started. Number 10. Our first world record comes from a content creator Molgot Kirby, who managed to kill Vartorvis in 31 seconds. Now this may not seem like a lot, but the techniques used in this fight will definitely leave you in awe. The fight starts way before that, because to get the maximum potential damage, you need to get Vartorvis boss Slayer task, which amplifies your damage by 15% with a Slayer helmet. Secondly, you need to have an alt account just outside waiting, and this alt account can restore your special attack and feed you supplies whenever needed. And then the fight begins. The very first thing Kirby does is use Spellbook Swap for two things. Number 1, to get a Troll from Archaea's Spellbook, which adds roughly about 30 damage for the kill, and secondly get Vengeance from Lunar Spellbook. Then you need to get a double Ruby Bolt spec for 220 damage, otherwise the record is going to be impossible. Kirby proceeds to turn off Protect from melee prayer so Vartorvis hits the Vengeance for maximum damage. He double claw specs, firstly hitting 77 and then following up 100 special attack. We are now about 12 seconds into the fight and Kirby has already dealt over 400 damage to Vartorvis. He continues swapping between Altar Ring for damage potential and Ring of Suffering, which deflects damage back. And now it's all about the sight. Vartorvis has an effect where the lower his hit points is, the less defensive stats he has, which works perfectly with the sight as it requires a lot of accuracy for peak damage. Notice during the Vartorvis minigame he winds up a basic attack which is required for the world record, because as soon as the minigame ends, the character automatically attacks Vartorvis. And to end the fight off, Kirby lowers his hit points with the Locator Orb and equips full Darok for that 74 juicy hit, leaving his final time at 31.2 seconds, a record that still stands today. Also, as a side note, just today at the time of recording this, Kirby also managed to get the world record for Leviathan. So this guy is legit, one of the nicest content creators. Congratulations to him and make sure to go check him out. Before we move on though, I want to announce the winners of this week's giveaway. If you didn't know yet, I managed to get 2 Dumekan Shadows in 3 days, increasing my bank value by 3 billion GP. So I thought, you know what, let's do a giveaway to the community, and here are the winners. Congratulations to all of you, and if you also want to participate in future giveaways, make sure you subscribe to the channel and come join our community Discord. Links are in the description. Okay, let's continue. Number 9. This time we're moving over to Corrupted Gauntlet, where Smork 3000 got a world record that hasn't been broken in almost 2 years. If you don't know, Corrupted Gauntlet is all about getting the right setup. You spawn in a room with just few tools, and it's your job to craft the armor and weapons to fight the final boss. Firstly, he gets the 1 in 3 chance for a weapon frame so he can make his magic staff. He then starts collecting supplies for tier 1 armor, which is gonna absorb a lot of the damage in the final fight. Keep in mind, he's also currently vengeanced, and he has to pray correctly to make sure the vengeance doesn't go off early. He gets very lucky and immediately finds a dragon, which drops the upgrade to his magic staff, and this is also where he wants to get hit to get that vengeance damage in. While killing the dragon, he scouts the other 2 rooms as well, and finally he needs just a little bit more corrupted shards to craft all of his items, so he lures the NPC over to make sure no time goes to waste, and that's it. That's the entire preparation phase. Just to put into perspective, for the average player it takes around 5 minutes to prepare the boss fights, sometimes more, sometimes less. For him it took 1 minute and 43 seconds. Also, as you can see, he doesn't have any food in his inventory because he's gonna use his prayer as a resource. Smork has total of 6 doses of prayer potions, and using the retribution heal, he can continuously heal himself back up when getting low hit points. Oh, and here's my favorite part. Did you see that? He used his fist to force Hanlev to swap to melee prayers. But that's not what the impressive part is. He managed to flick Piety for that 1 cycle to squeeze in even the smallest margins of damage. Every point of damage matters. The goal is always the same. Force Hanlev to pray either range or melee so he can continue to DPS with his magic staff. Hanlev swaps prayers after every 5 attack. So Smork 3000 does 5 attacks with magic and then 1 with melee, then 5 attacks with magic and 1 with ranged. And he continues continues this cycle until Hunlef is dead. As you can see, this requires very intense prayer swapping. You really can't make any mistakes here. Everything has to be to perfection. And turns out 6 prayer doses was exactly what he needed to get the world record run, because he's out of food and he gets the kill. Congratulations to Smork3000 for one of the most impressive world records in the game. Make sure to go check him out. Number 8. This time we're moving over to fight caves because Pahiz managed to get one of the best RNG runs I've ever seen in my life, and getting a 19 minute and 10 second fire cave world record. When doing fight caves, it's all about utilizing the best rotations depending on the time of the day. You see, fight caves has different spawn points for monsters depending on real life time, and the best rotation for world records currently is number 5. But that alone isn't enough to get the world record. Pahiz is doing something that nobody has ever managed to do. When you're doing close to a 20-minute run, you are much more likely to make mistakes than doing something like a 31-second Vartorvis KC. So with things like fight caves, it is important to have every wave memorized and utilize everything you have to offer. Like for example, look at this. I'm gonna play it in normal speed and then we'll slow it down. Yeah, that's it. Did you see it? So let me slow it down for you. He sights the meleeer, does a 7-way switch to ranged gear, swaps to prayer tab for rigor prayer to get more DPS, closes his inventory to blow pipe the meleeer once, brings his equipment tab up to remove his primordial boots for the +1 range bonus, moves closer to the major, closes his inventory one more time to attack the meleeer, brings his inventory back out to swap to twisted bow to attack the major, summons a troll and moves his primordial boots to the right place in his inventory for the melee switch once again. And all of that was done in a matter of 3 seconds. Even slowing down the video to 50%, you can't really keep up with it. And he did this for 19 minutes straight. Pahiz himself said that this was actually a pretty sloppy run, but he got insane RNG with his hits. And I don't know about you, but if that was sloppy, I can't imagine what a perfect run would look like. And in the final wave, Pahiz lowers the Jad over one more tile so the healer underneath the Jad doesn't get to him. Pahiz then proceeds to noodle the glow spec, but it doesn't matter. His run so far has been so clean that he's actually about 14 seconds ahead of the second place run, which to a surprise of nobody is also claimed by Pahiz. So congratulations to him for getting the first and the second place, and hopefully we can see a run in under 90 minutes very soon. Number 7. For the longest time, everyone in the old school RuneScape community thought that true 600 invocation raids in Domes of a Mascot was impossible. And all of it was because of one invocation, the 25-minute timer. Even if you enter the raid with 600 invocations and complete it, if you don't make the 25-minute timer, it would turn into 580 invocations by the end. Until a few months ago, when 8 speedrunners got together and figured out a new strategy to help achieve this feat. The simulation said it was possible, but players just couldn't figure out, and oftentimes the runs were around 28 minutes. But then the speedrunners figured out the Bone Dagger special attack, which reduces defense, doesn't stack on top of each other. So they swapped out few Bone Daggers for Panda Scott Swords and got much more consistent with their times. Before this run, they got a 25-minute and 9-second run, which already proved their point that this has to be possible. And then one raid after that, they got 24 minutes and 37 seconds timer. If you ever done Domes of a Mascot in an 8-man raid before, you know how difficult it is to coordinate with 7 other players. The good thing here is that all the players know their exact role, where they have to stand at each moment, what their job is in the team, and so on. This is extremely hard to coordinate and takes a lot of time and practice to get right. Like the fact that they complete the monkey puzzle in 1 minute and 45 seconds, which usually takes more than 3 minutes, or the Kefris puzzle in 40 seconds, or the fact that they're constantly utilizing the red Partisan, which gives 25% damage increase to your entire team for 6 seconds. My favorite part about the entire raid is when the 8-man team has perfectly allocated the skulls in a way where everyone heals equal amount with the yellow Keris Partisan. It's like a beautifully coordinated dance in a way. Every player spreads, gets one skull, and then they finish off the final skulls together. Also, just to put into perspective, the Warden at this level with 8-man team has over 17,000 hit points, which is the highest fastest of any boss in the game, and the team manages to clear this out in less than 3 minutes. And then we have the final part, which is absolutely chaos all around, but the team gets a nice double rare carry spec and everyone hits their Sarah crossbow specs, which brings the final time to 24 minutes and 37 seconds. Congratulations to these 8 beasts for doing something that for the longest time was thought to be impossible. Good job, guys. Number 6. Okay, let's take a break from bossing a little bit and showcase how the most iconic quest in RuneScape's history was completed in less than a minute. If you don't know, Jagex introduced quest speedrunning to old school RuneScape in 2022, and that has brought many new speedrunners to compete for the best possible times. One of them is the iconic quest Cook's Assistant, and one player named Aiku managed to get such an absurd time that many believe this won't be broken ever again. Firstly, the way Aiku sets up his speedrun. He has a total of 5 alt accounts, all prepared on different stages of the quest to get the best possible run. His first alt account is right at the beginning of the quest, which keeps the cook from not walking away, because if you have a dialogue with an NPC, they never move. Aiko also starts by getting a 1 in 64 pot of flower drop from an imp before the quest even starts, and he has 2 alt accounts to lure the imp to his pot. He also has an alt account ready to talk in general store where he buys the bucket, and his 5th alt account is near the bridge where he lured the chicken for the egg drop. After that, the only thing left for him is to milk the cow and be perfectly in cycle for the home teleport, and he manages to do just that, which leaves the final time at 59.4 seconds, making it the very first Cook's Assistant completion in under 1 minute. Congratulations to Aiko for setting one of the all-time quest speedrunning records. Number 5, and just like that we go back to raiding. This time it's Chambers of Serik Trio Raid, and Hisoka, Trio Elysian and Shady's Pro managed to get the timer of 9 minutes and 14 seconds for the entire raid. The first room is Vasa, which they literally one-shot. Well, almost one-shot. They all get hit 80 with Vengeance activated, then they use Sarah crossbow spec and finish off with the Twisted Pose. Vasa loses 600 hit points in 4 seconds, and just like that the first room is completed. In the second tightrope room, I love this little trick they use where one player lures the rangers over so they don't attack, the second player then proceeds to go over the tightrope, and the third player is waiting ready to telekinetic grab just so they can save 2 extra seconds on completing the room. The third room is Shamans, and by tightly keeping close to the walls, the Shamans will never jump up, which gives the 3 players freely time to max DPS and finish the room very fast. The fourth room is Vespula, and the portal drops so fast that if you blink you're gonna miss it. All 3 players hit their Sarah crossbow specs, which is 330 damage in total, and they finish off with 1 or 2 Dumakin Shadow hits, again another 10-second room. And after the team finishes with Crab Room, they only had the Great Orm left, and as you might already expect, it goes pretty flawlessly. What I noticed is that the team oftentimes doesn't do the normal 3-1 and 4-0 cycles, and instead favors raw DPS over that, which loses them some hit points but gives more damage. In the final head phase, Hisoka has 7 hit points left, no supplies, no nothing, and he refuses to eat his purple sweets because that would mean losing on DPS, so instead he goes for the retribution play, and it pays off, leaving them with the final time at 9 minutes and 14 seconds. Congratulations to this epic trio for getting the world record on Chambers of Serik normal mode. Number 4. This is my personal favorite on the entire list, just for the sheer amount of luck and damage it involved. I'm talking about Zulrah, one of the most well-known bosses in old school RuneScape, and a player named MK20 who managed to get the world record time in 25 seconds. The run itself is quite simple. Once again, you need to be on a Slayer task for Zulrah to get that plus 15% damage amplification. And MK20 starts off by doing Vengeance on Lunar Spellbook before the fight, then swapping over to Arceus Spellbook for the Trolls, and then later on gets another Vengeance in the middle of the fight. Firstly, it gets some nice hits with Dumakin Shadow. It's 44 to 41 to 41 to 48, and it just keeps going. Then Zulrah swaps phases and he starts sniping with Dragon Knives. Since the maximum damage you can do is 50 to Zulrah, this is a perfect weapon for world record attempts, as the special attack has 2 attacks and the maximum damage per attack is 31, which means you can technically hit 62, and since it removes 25% of your special attack, attack, that gives you an option for maximum of 248 damage with your special attack. And that's pretty much what we see him do as well. He gets insane Dragon Knife special attacks and finishes the run with a Twisted Bow, leaving the final time to 25.2 seconds. Now the craziest part is that he actually missed a few cycles here and there, and the maximum potential run could have been 22.8 seconds. And Kirby actually put that into perspective how insane this time would have potentially been, which is 1 in a 1.5 million chance, which is about 15,000 hours of gameplay to get the perfect run. So on average, to beat this record again, it would take players years of trying over and over again to beat this Zulrah record. Of course, until new gear comes out and the chances of beating the record become much more likely. But until then, congratulations to MK20 for getting an insanely rare and awesome world record. Number 3. We already saw Tombs of a Mascot amazing run, we already saw Chambers of Serik run, and now it's time to also showcase an absolute banger Theater of Blood run to end off the 3 raids. This time it's duo with Finish Flash and Ator as the 2 epic speedrunners, and their final time was 1958, which was the first time anyone has ever managed to beat the duo Theater of Blood in under 20 minutes. The run itself is clean, that's all there really is to say about this. As you've already seen, these players know the in and outs of every room and every corner and how to take advantage of every single game mechanic. So in the end, it really does come down to RNG of your hits. Can you get that nuclear max DPS to snipe the records? My personal favorite part of the entire run is them just absolutely tanking the Skotesag maze by using game stalls and also Phoenix necklaces to avoid the damage and just brute force going through it. It also helps that during Versik they have some absolutely crazy DPS, and when it all came down to it, they got the hits they were looking for, which gave them the final time of 90 minutes 58 seconds. Funnily enough, literally today, that record was broken again by Morsky Besk and Resk when they got 19 minutes and 51 seconds, which was 7 seconds faster than the previous record. In any case, big congrats to all these 4 players for pushing the limits on what is possible in DOB. Number 2. Okay, we have 2 more left, and I want to take a step back from PVM and showcase one of the longest speedruns in old school RuneScape, which is getting the Mechscape. 2 players went head to head, Hypoxiong and JCW. Both very experienced players with thousands of hours of gameplay under their belts, and they decided to host a competition between themselves on who can get the Mechscape in the fastest amount of time. The end result was 771 hours and 3 minutes for Hypoxiong and 791 hours and 50 minutes for JCW. Some of the crazy rules were that you can use any amount of money in the game to gain experience, meaning you get crazy training methods like this, where the players used to make crystal armor, which is the fastest training method for crafting and smithing, coming in at 20 million experience an hour and costing about 5 billion GP to get from 70 to 99. My personal favorite training method was for Slayer, where they would use alt accounts to group up monsters, then log in with their main account and use special attack along with Din's Bulwark or Crystal Halberd to just massacre the entire monster group, then log out and repeat the process. This is the very first time we've seen this type of speedrun where players record themselves going from 0 to Mechscape, and has set a decisive benchmark for future players looking out to break the records. In any case, congratulations to Hypoxiong and JCW for being the first 2 players to do this, and hopefully we'll see many more like this in the future. And now it's time for number 1 spot, and I think this is one of those records that's definitely gonna be broken again and again over the years. It is the Infernal speedrun. Of course, it has to be Infernal, one of the most sought out pieces of content in the game. At the time of recording this, the current world record holder is Rastaman with a time of 41 minutes and 5 seconds. First of all, Rastaman is like the guy for the Infernal speedruns. Just to put into perspective, the second place currently is an entire minute behind of Rastaman, and when we're talking about world record attempts, 1 minute is almost like an eternity, which means Rastaman currently is in a league on its own. And it definitely shows this in his Inferno runs as well. I have never seen something so clean in my life. When we saw that Fight Caves run earlier on in the video and it was super clean, wave after wave, this is almost similar but way harder to solve, because firstly, you don't have predetermined rotations. Every wave is semi-randomized and you have to solve everything on the spot. Secondly, the monsters are much harder to kill, and when most speedruns require the players to have luck with DPS, this is much more than than that. You have to saw the waves correctly, but also not take damage while doing so. Let's take a good example, which is wave 62, one of the harder waves during the run. He gets dragged out for the nibblers, which is intentional, and Rastaman starts flicking 4 monsters at the same time: the Major, the Ranger, the Blobs, and the Pats. The melee is also behind the pillar, but is about to teleport out very soon. Luckily, the Debo slaps really hard, but he gets hit 42 just before the Major disappears. He then lures the melee over behind the pillar and manages to get chance, but somehow survives. Rastaman, however, refuses to eat up because DPS is more important than playing it safe. He blowpipes the last 3 remaining NPCs while flicking the prayer once again, and that is just one of 69 total ways he had to solve in record time. It takes a lot of brain power and practice to get to this point, and so far not many players can do what Rastaman does. With 44 hit points left and no prayer potions, he manages to get himself to suck, and now it's all gonna come down to time. Can he get sucked before his prayer runs out? He reserves his prayer points and his run energy as much as possible. He gets the Ranger in time, and he lets the pillar tank a few hits for him, and now he has to start tanking the Major and Chad at the same time, while also DPSing Suck. And he's gonna wait one more cycle for the healers, and this is do or die situation. He tags all the healers without killing them because he realizes that he needs to kill Suck now, and he gets it at the exact same time as he also dies, which puts his final time at 41 minutes and 5 seconds. A truly fascinating world record. There are Colosseum and Infernal simulators that have the entire fights in your web browser with full 3D models and assets. It's come to a point where it feels like you're practicing the actual fight. I thought this was the coolest thing I've ever seen, and it really helped me prepare for Suck fights to get that beautiful Infernal cape. I'll leave a link down below in the description if you want to practice yourself, but that made me wonder, are there any other interesting and useful old school RuneScape facts that might help you out during your gameplay? So I spent the last 2 weeks going through the internet to find some cool little RuneScape tricks that can help you out, and we're starting off with a very simple shortcut for banking. Did you know that you can press CTRL+F in your bank to find specific items? And you can even use more than and less than symbols to find the right value item. For example, if I use more than 5 million GP in my search box, only the items that are more than 5 million gold show up in my bank. Essentially, it's the same thing as the normal search option, but it saves you a little bit of time, especially for players that are used to keyboard shortcuts. Actually, Runelite has many other cool features like this. For example, there is a plugin called No Use Player, and it prevents you from using items on other players. So when you're doing a farm run, birdhouse run, minigames, or activities that involve other players, you don't accidentally use items on them, as the plugin completely disables it. There is also a plugin called Monkey Metrics, which comes in handy during your burstable Slayer tasks, as it shows you exactly how many NPCs are stacked on a single tile. If it's more than 9 NPCs, your bursting spells won't damage the extra monsters. Or a plugin called Action Progress, which showcases you the original RuneScape action bar and tells you how many seconds you have left before your inventory is completed. It works really well for skills like crafting, herb lore, fletching, and many others, and allows you to plan your next inventory at the right time. And I'm gonna show you one more plugin that was a complete game changer for me, and that is the Dude, Where Is My Stuff? This plugin helps you keep track of all the items you have in your bank at minigames, bosses, death coffer, leprechauns, and much more. You can just save your account data on the plugin, and it tells you exactly the quantity of items. Like for example, if you need to know how many prayer potions you have in your bank during your Slayer tasks, but you don't want to leave your Slayer task, this plugin helps you out and says, hey, you have 127 prayer potions left in your bank. Wanna know how many Barbarian Assault points you have without going to the minigame? It tells you the exact number. Wanna know if you have a rake in your 2 leprechaun stash before going on a farming trip? You guessed it, this helps you out. It's an excellent time saver, and I recommend it to everyone who has multiple accounts, plus it has a cool name, which is just bonus points. Time to continue with some other interesting facts that might be useful. And by the way, if you'd like to see more videos like this where I find useful tips and tricks, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on the next video. Let's continue. Bloodbark is a magic armor you should definitely consider getting on your mid-game account. A lot of the guys out there that require magic gear oftentimes refer to Mystic as the go-to armor, but Bloodbark recently got buffed and is now the superior version of that. It has much better defensive stats than Mystic and Void, so your tanking is gonna be easier. It has a built-in amplifier for blood spells, which makes it really good for raids, and it has more accuracy than any other mid-game magic armor. If you combine it with the Ancient Scepter, it can heal you value for almost 40% of the damage dealt. Out of curiosity, I tested this out on Dust Devils and I almost went from 25 hit points to 99 hit points with 2 casts. It's also much more consistent to obtain for Ironman accounts. If your plan is to get full RM set, you can get locked out by RNG for hundreds of hours in battles. But with this armor, the highest requirement is 81 rune crafting, which is quite high level, but it's guaranteed once you get the level, and since most Ironmans need to train their rune crafting anyways, this is a very good alternative to your normal magic armor setup. Okay, let's move on to Varlamore now, and I want to show you a very spontaneous, insane moneymaker that I accidentally discovered few days ago. And that moneymaker has to do with this shop in Gamdorom. With the release of Beryllious Moon came tons of new shops into Varlamore, and one of them sells all kinds of jewelry. And I think what a lot of players have missed is that you can buy all of this jewelry from GE and sell it back to this shop on a large profit margin. For example, the diamond bracelet buys from GE at the price of 2k each and sells into the shop at 2.6k each, and this same thing applies to many other items as well. So to test it out, I bought 200 of each individual ruby and diamond items, which cost me approximately 2.2 million GP. I then went into the store and started dumping them. The entire process took me about 6 minutes in total, and after everything was sold back to the shop, I ended up with over 2.77 million GP, which gave me 550k profit in 6 minutes, and that comes to 5.5 million GP an hour with almost no requirements. Now it does take time to buy the jewelry from GE, and what I would do is leave the offers in overnight and make it more of a long-term goal. I would highly recommend focusing on ruby and diamond items as they offer the best value for your money, and keep in mind that realistically only like 5 players can do it at a time due to limited amount of worlds in the game, but since the jewelry are quite stable, you can just come back at any time and put this moneymaker into use. I wouldn't recommend this as your main moneymaker, but it's a great alternative to making a few million GP very quickly. Okay, let's talk about few other Varlamore specific tips that are really overpowered. With the release of Hunter's Guild came a new item called Huntsman Kit, and that allows you to store basically infinite amount of imp in box items. What imp in box does is allow you to bank anything in your inventory, and this goes for notable items as well. Now it's not the most effective way of banking because it does take time to catch these imps and they are untradeable, which means all players need to get it themselves, but there are occasions where this is very useful. One place for that is bursting Slayer tasks. If you already ran out of alks during your first Slayer task, this is a great alternative to bank all your alcohols without ever leaving the task. Other places for that are bosses that are really far away, like God Wars Dungeon, Taken Kings, or few other Slayer tasks like Kraken. Basically, if you're doing long tasks and you don't want to leave loot on the ground, you now can just send all that loot to your bank while taking up one inventory space. Since Imp in a Box is an untradeable item, you need to catch them yourself, and it does require 71 Hunter. I found the Assiduous spawn location to be the fastest way to get them, as there are 9 imps just wandering around in small area, so it's pretty fast to get a full inventory of them, and it also offers over 100,000 Hunter experience per hour. Since catching one impling gives you 450 Hunter XP, it does add up over time. The reason I like it so much is because you never lose the Huntsman Kit from your inventory, even if you die. So this works really well for things like wilderness bosses or revenants, because even if you get PK'd, you still keep all your imp boxes because they are stored inside the Huntsman Kit. You can catch over 250 imps per hour if using the Assiduous House Teleport, which can bank you over 500 items per hour, whether it's expensive bones, alcohols, noted loot, you name it. I recommend giving this a try. It's not the most efficient way to do things, but it's really chill method. Okay, I recently got 99 prayer using bone shards in Varlamore, and I want to show you a quick few tips that helped me out there. Firstly, if you're an Ironman, there is an infinite stock for Jago wine in the Gamdorom bar, so you don't have to world hop in Trainer Village anymore to get your wines or make them yourself. The bank is nearby and you get thousands of them in a matter of minutes. Also, I found out that using things like Ancient Maze Space in your player owned house increases your maximum prayer points, which allows you to use the bone shards even longer without needing to bank. This also works for items like Falador's Shield, which restores your prayer twice a day. And you can even use Celotropes, which do save 5% of all the blessed bone shards you use. So a typical run would look something like this. I go to my BOH, I restore all my stats and my Kool-Aid pool and spec twice with the ancient mace to get maximum prayer points. I use my Ketesal whistle to go to Hunter's Guild, use the bird to travel to Tiamat, I bless my jug of wines at the altar, go sacrifice my bone shards at the libation ball. Once I'm done with my inventory, I teleport back to my BOH, restore my stats again, bank at the closest place and repeat the process. With this, you can get easily over 1 million prayer experience per hour, but keep in mind that collecting the bone shards takes a lot of time on an Ironman account. If you're a main account, I would recommend just buying the bones and using a chisel to turn them into bone shards. Also, a quick side note, go check your Varrock museum for free experience. You might have some leftover lamps after you completed the latest quests, like Defender of Varrock, which gives you a 5000 experience lamp that can also be used on prayer. And while we're talking about skills, the newest skill, sailing, can already make you tons of profit if you start investing now. It is very likely that players are extremely eager to buy pirate clothes once sailing comes out, which means it's a perfect opportunity to start buying them right now, because once the skill does come out, it's likely that prices of pirate clothes will go up due to demand. Now, sailing won't come out anytime soon, so there is still plenty of time, but I found out that even just buying the clothes right now from Mostly Harmless and selling them back at GE gives insane profit margins. All the clothes and shops are 350 GP each, and some of these items sell for up to 5k each, because players really want them and it's really convenient to buy them from GE. So keep an eye out for these kind of things. You can make some serious profit if the timing is right and the investment isn't that steep either, since you're not paying much for the clothes. Every player has roughly 400 world hops before they get limited out, and every player also gains roughly 100 world hops every hour. So if you world hop every 7 seconds in game, you will get kicked out after 1 hour because you used up all your 500 world hops, but they do restore over time. So if you come back again 4 hours later, you will have your 400 world hops back up ready to use. This is great for players who are looking to make money through shops in game, as it oftentimes requires to world hop quite fast, and the limit can be annoying at times. So if you never want to get logged out again, make sure you don't use more than 100 world hops per hour. The year is 2017. Jagex had just released the very first raid into old school RuneScape, and they were putting a lot of effort into making Saya a continent filled with content. So at the beginning of 2017, Jagex came out with a blog about the Brimstone village west of Corinth, where the nefarious Infernal will spawn. In this blog, they firstly talked about a brimstone thieving method, which was later turned into pickpocketing the char creatures. Interestingly enough, the char thieving method on release gave more profit and experience than any other thieving method in the game, but that was quickly hotfixed on the same exact day, as it was simply too much loot and you could get upwards of 300,000 experience an hour with this method. But that wasn't the only thing you can get from the Brimstone village. It also offered Brimstone Fishing, which later on was turned into Infernal Eels, and it offered the Galit armor, which later was changed to Obsidian armor. Funnily enough, players in 2017 were not very interested in the Infernal cape. At the time, players were still learning the ropes of the game, and getting a fire cape was a big achievement, so making it even more difficult and promoting it as the hardest piece of content in old school RuneScape was just not everyone's cup of tea. One Reddit comment said this: "I don't like that this cape is better than the fire cape. Can't we just make this cape best in slot for range and magic?" And the one below that says, "Yeah, we totally need to hit 45s with Ice Barrage." Oh, how the times have changed over the years. So, the devs take in all the feedback and decide to release an updated blog 2 days later, stating that thematically it makes much more sense that the Inferno is related to the existing Tsar city rather than standalone concept in a land far, far away. They construct the city itself, which, by the way, interesting trivia, the city of Mol Ul Rek you see in the game today is actually designed by a player, which was actually kinda cool to see, and I'll show you a few other player made updates later on in this video as well. But for Inferno, it was time to send it for a poll. Interestingly, Jagex polled Inferno 1 year earlier in 2016, and that poll absolutely failed, mainly because it was just called Jad 2, like a continuation to a questline or a sequel to an iconic movie, rather than standalone content that the Inferno is today. So the expectations 1 year later in 2017 were kinda the same. There was a very large group of players who didn't like an upgrade to the iconic fire cape. Luckily this time around the concept was much better explained, and the idea of bringing in the hardest content that old school RuneScape has ever seen was enough to convince majority of players to vote yes. And in June 2017, Inferno entered the old school RuneScape, which now, 7 years later, is still considered one of the best pieces of content that's ever been released in the game. I quickly want to mention that we are so close to 30,000 subscribers, so if you enjoyed any part of my content and want to support me, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much. Let's continue. With the success of quests like Dragon Slayer 2 and minigames like Infernal, Jagex felt great about releasing content that was hard to tackle but felt very rewarding once it's completed. In many players' eyes, the 2017-2018 period is considered one of the best in the game's history, because even though the content was scarce, the quality was extremely high. And that's when the initial idea for Raids 2 also came into play. Some players say it was piggybacked from the success of Chambers in 2017, but to me it felt like the natural next step of progression, just like in any MMO. Once a game has been out for 5 years, it does make sense to start adding more and more endgame content to satisfy players who have worked very hard to get there. Initially, Theater of Blood was supposed to have 14 different types of rewards, but a lot of them just weren't much liked by the players. There was a prayer scroll similar to scrolls from Chambers that was called the Judgment Scroll, and it required 85 prayer. The idea was that it was an overhead prayer that boosts your attack and strength by 10% and lowers your defense by 50%, and 1/6 of all the damage you deal is removed from your prayer points. So if you hit a 60 with a God Sword, you would lose 10 prayer points immediately. The caveat was that since it's an overhead prayer like protection prayers, you can use this alongside with piety, so the actual damage increase would have been 33%. Players were divided by the scroll, because despite it giving total of 33% damage boost, it seemed not so good. Mostly because you lose protection prayers, which are a must in any piece of hard content in the game. Interestingly enough, Jagex also promoted these 3 sets of armor during a live stream, and it was hinted that they were at one point supposed to be rewards from Theater of Blood. But after the blogs came out, they were scrapped until of course Nightmare Boss came out, and the armor made a comeback, which is now called the Inquisitor set. But there were few other rewards that also didn't make the cut, like there was a potion that was supposed to restore your prayer points and stamina at the same time. The other potion that also didn't make the final rewards was a super prayer potion, and this one restores your prayer and also adds a prayer renewal effect that restores additional 6 points over time. Both of these received roughly 72% yes votes, but since the vote change at the time required 75 to pass, this unfortunately never made it in. And the final reward that didn't make it in was the best in slot range Vambraces, which received a whopping 74.9% of yes votes and missed out by just 0.1%. Luckily, only 4 years later, Jagex released them into the game anyways, and even made them stronger than they initially were, by adding extra attack and prayer bonuses. They are now called Sarite Vambraces, so I guess the lesson here is try again until you succeed. Once everything was set in stone, it was time for a ball. Keep in mind that Chambers of Serik Challenge Mode was released just 2 months before Theater of Blood, and the feedback from that was extremely positive, so the expectations for this next raid were sky high. And that showed in the ball as well, because almost 90% of players voted yes on Theater of Blood. I've asked a few people in my community who have extensively done all 3 raids for hundreds of KC, and the answer is unanimously the same. Theater of Blood is the best raid in old school RuneScape. Nevertheless, I imagine the raid would be slightly more popular if it had 14 rewards in total, like Jagex polled at the time, but I guess we'll never find out. Next up, I want to talk about raiding posts. Older generation of players remember the first days of old school RuneScape and how everything was traded by players to players. There was no GE, there was no systems in place to track trades, and there was nothing to track the actual value of items. It was just made up on the spot. I remember I wanted to train Herblore on the first week, and I had to buy unidentified herbs because it was the only way to get any experience. And the idea was that you get all sorts of different herbs, and they're all 1k each. Once you identify them, some are qualms, which are worth less, some are ranars, which are worth more, but the general value of items should come to approximately 1k each. Apparently, few players figured out the ID codes for bad herbs and then sold them in bulk for 1k each. So if you weren't careful, you just got a bunch of qualms and marantils, which at the time were valued at like 100 GP each. But by the time you figured that out, the trader was long gone. These were one of the many scams pulled in the initial year of the game, and Jagex wanted to come up with a solution to prevent that. Now keep in mind that in 2013, players were full on riding the nostalgia wave. This was it. This was old school RuneScape, and it was never gonna change. No updates, no new fancy technology, and every day the same sentence was carried out. We don't want anything, which honestly now has matured like fine milk. So when Jagex initially proposed Grand Exchange, players said immediately, no way Jose, we don't want that, trading in Varrock Center for hours is what it's all about. But as time went on, more players got frustrated that they spend more and more of their valuable time just finding people to trade rather than actually playing the game. If you have a game as big as RuneScape, spending half of your time in one location trading others gets boring very fast. And that's when Jagex came up with an idea for an auction house, which was just a mustache and a fake nose put on top of the GE. And guess what? Suddenly players absolutely loved it. This is not the GE, this is something entirely different, Jagex said. The idea was simple. Players want to obtain items quickly without spending hours trading others. Players also want to trade others while they're offline. And finally, players want to see actual prices of items before trading them over. Essentially, the idea was that anyone can put up their offer into the auction house. Other people can see those offers, they can see the person who sells, the price, the quantity, and then make a decision if they want to buy that. So they poll it, and to the surprise of many, it actually did pass, which was probably a mistake in hindsight. You see, firstly, Jagex and the players wanted to keep some type of player interaction with the trading post. So when someone was selling an item, their name was behind that item, and you had to add them to your friend list and still make an offer through that. However, what ended up happening was the opposite. You had occasions like this where a player put up an offer 2 minutes ago and then just turned their private off, so nobody could reach him and the offer meant nothing. Or maybe it was just a flex on 2 farming seeds. Sometimes you wanted to add 10 players just to get a rune pickaxe, which just simply wasn't possible because everyone had their private turned off. Just 1 week after it was released, people already gave up on trading posts and just went back to selling items on third-party sites like Cybers or stick to Varrock West Bank. I honestly think part of it was just Jagex finding the worst possible way to trade other players, so when they see the trading post, their immediate thought is like, hey, you know what? Maybe GE isn't as bad as they say it is. And guess what? It worked once again. The trading post lasted for a few weeks before Jagex completely removed it because players just didn't like it at all, and they replaced it with the GE we still see today. It was definitely one of the most fascinating disasters that ever happened in old school RuneScape, and looking back, it's kinda cool to see how the team was just experimenting with all sorts of crazy updates until something worked out. Okay, let's talk about Wilderness Slayer. Firstly, it doesn't require any combat levels to begin with, which means technically you can start your grind at level 3. However, I would recommend you start around level 70 and earn your first Slayer points at other masters. You wanna make sure you have at least minimum of 3 things unlocked, and that is Superiors, Bosses, and Revenants Extended. Now, you can start at level 3 like I said, it is an option and it's not the worst option in the world, because honestly, any starting account is gonna get so much money from doing Wilderness Slayer, and since you also get most Slayer points out of any Slayer master, it's pretty decent on early level accounts. It is actually the only way to make Slayer profitable at early levels, because if you do it the normal way, you're not gonna see much money until you get at least 80 Slayer minimum. But with Wilderness Slayer, you can start earning millions of GP at level 1. For example, let's say your combat level is 85. For completing every 10 tasks with Neve, you are rewarded 60 points. But for Wilderness Slayer, it's 125 points. So basically, it's double what you would normally get. The tasks are also much easier to complete in general, as you have a lot of options available. Like, you never have to worry about tasks like Iron Dragons or Steel Dragons. You can also prioritize if you want to focus on experience and getting more than 100,000 Slayer experience per hour on tasks like Dark Warriors, or you want to focus more on money like Zombie Pirates, which by the way count as 2 tasks from Crystalia. One is Zombie task and the other is Pirates. It gives you great options to juggle between making bank and making experience, and you never have to worry about annoying tasks like Chromatic Dragons, Elves, Trolls, Wyverns, and few others that just give bad experience or bad loot. Overall, Crystalia doesn't have that many bad tasks. I actually made a tier list for myself to see what tasks I like the most and what I absolutely don't enjoy doing. Like for example, magic axes are immediate skip for me. If possible, I would just block them entirely, and then you have tasks like Mammoths, Lava Dragons, Earth Warriors, which are okay, but if I'm not feeling it, I just skip them as well. My block list goes as follows: Spiritual Creatures, Aviances, Ice Warriors, Bloodwelds, Fire Giants, and Magic Axes. I found that none of these tasks are good experience or good loot, but I also have all 6 blocks available. If you start from lower levels, obviously you have to pick and choose which ones fit you the best. And the rest of the 20 plus tasks are all pretty good. The reason it makes it so good is that all of them are in multi, which allows you to use cannon or ice spells, and the other reason is that monsters that usually don't drop anything now have a very juicy drop table. And this drop table can easily get you like 1 million extra GP per task, even from monsters like Hellhounds, which normally only drop glue scrolls, but now you have this entire other drop table attached to it. The reason the experience suddenly did get so good is because Jagex changed the spawn rate for many of the monsters in the wilderness from 30 seconds to 9 seconds, which absolutely speeds up the tasks and you don't have to worry about waiting time. There's always something to do. And not only once again that means more Slayer points because the tasks are shorter and faster, but also means if you get a bad task, you can just quickly finish it up and go get another one. When I started training Slayer on my account, I absolutely despised doing tasks like 195 Black Demons, which on a bad day could take you up to 2 hours to complete if you're a casual player. That's never gonna be the case with Wilderness Slayer. Now, how can you set everything up so you can quickly jump from one task to another without any downtime? Firstly, let me show you how to set up your bank and what you need. I'm not gonna go over every single item in this tab, most are self-explanatory, but I wanna highlight few of the things I found more usable. Firstly, I swapped out Black Hide for Mixed Hide as it straight up gives better stats in almost every combat style, and the armor itself is still extremely cheap, like 10k per piece. Now, since I'm a main account, I can just buy all the 3 wilderness weapons, which absolutely slap by the way. For example, you can hit 60s with Ice Barrage, with the Accursed Scepter and Slayer Helmet. It's disgustingly powerful, and the same goes for other 2 weapons as well. Like I hit 70s with the Ursine Chain Mace on a Slayer task, and it's a 4 thick weapon. But if you don't have the money or you're an Iron Man, don't worry about it because firstly, you're gonna obtain a lot of Revenant tasks, and the wilderness weapons are 5 times more likely to drop during your Revenant Slayer task, so on average you probably should see 1 weapon per 4 to 5 tasks. That's why I mentioned before how important it is to immediately unlock the Revenant extension for Wildy Slayer, as it allows you to obtain all the weapons much faster. And the same goes for the attachments to the weapons as well. All the 3 wilderness bosses are extremely common tasks, and we come back to the same thing I mentioned. Do you want money or do you want experience? You can choose. And also, if you want to access more content like this, consider subscribing to the channel to not miss out on my next video, as I found out over 88% of my viewers are simply not subscribed. So consider that if you want to get notified on the next video. Thank you very much. The other thing to focus on is teleports. I highly recommend things like Glory Amulets. If you have leftover Slayer points, I would also consider unlocking Slayer Rings, and the best amulet for Wilderness Slayer is the Burning Amulet, as it opens up so many options to get to your tasks the fastest. Okay, when you have everything set up in your bank tab, your task picked and ready to gain experience, the first thing you should keep in mind at any task is that most monsters in the Wilderness Slayer dungeon are unaggressive, which means that PKers can ward hop under you and immediately attack you. So unfortunately, this isn't AFK at all, and since most of the monsters are unaggressive, that also means it's highly recommended to bring cannon with you, as it lures the monsters in and it allows you to aggro. If you do have a cannon and you plan to use it at every task, make sure to place it as deep inside the room as possible. This is just to stay out of vision. You see, peekers usually hop around areas where they can see cannons shooting out, which usually indicates someone is in the room. The deeper inside the room you place your cannon, the harder it'll make for the peekers to notice you. Always prioritize mage defense above everything else. That's why I highly recommend the Mixed Hide armor, as it has good magic defense while also being fairly cheap. If you don't want to risk anything at all, this is my absolute budget setup, which is Slayer Helmet, a Vernic, and my Chain Mace as the 3 items I'm always gonna protect. Then I have Monk Robes or Proselyte, whichever one you choose, and Glory Amulet, Rune Gloves, Arty Cape, and Climbing Boots. In total, I risk less than 100k in this setup, and it's really easy to get all of these items again, even if you die during your tasks. You can, however, approach Wilderness Slayer in a different way, which is anti-PKing. I don't recommend doing this, as you're mostly there to gain insane experience, but if you want to get your heart rate up, you can challenge the peekers with some nice Void Waker surprises. Firstly, keep in mind to turn your skull protection on, which means you will never lose your most valuable items. Whenever I had a burstable task like Dust Devils, I usually just focus on the task itself to get the fastest experience, but certain tasks just bring in more peekers than others, and for those, I'm going full anti-peeking. It's one of those things that makes training a skill for me much more fun, but I completely understand if the average player doesn't care about this. If you are just looking to escape anti-peekers, always remember things like using Player Indicator plugin, which detects peekers on your minimap and allows you for the quick one-click teleport before they jump on you. The other two plugins I highly recommend is firstly the cannon plugin, which highlights the spots you should place your cannon during your tasks, and the second plugin I recommend using is the Wilderness Lines, which shows multi-lines at level 30 lines, and it alarms you when another player is nearby by giving you a notification. But if anti-peeking isn't your thing, that's absolutely fine. Just try to focus on getting the best possible tasks you can, and don't be afraid to use those Slayer points to skip the bad tasks, as you're gonna have so many points soon enough that you don't even know what to do with them. When I'm doing burstable tasks, I can easily get over 100,000 Slayer experience per hour, and with tasks like Necreos and Abyssal Demons, I can reach even up to 120,000. It's also incredibly profitable. At the top you have things like Revenants, Wilderness Bosses, Zombie Pirates and Scorpia. Below that we have all the good burstable tasks like Necreos, Abyssal Demons, Cheerless, Dust Devils, which take advantage of the Wilderness Slayer drop table. And then we have the rest of the list. I particularly like doing Green Dragons and Lava Dragons, as I have the Wilderness Elite Diary completed, which allows me to gather Noted Bones, and I can easily get up to 1 million GP for a 15-minute task. All of that with the added benefit of getting Laren keys almost every single task, which is also gonna add up extra 500k GP every single time. Whenever I have Chaos Druid task, I always bring my cannon with me, since the zombie pirates are right next to it, which allows me to farm both of them. So the Chaos Druids give me experience and the other one gives me loot. One task that really surprised me was Mammoths, because they actually do give extremely good experience, and it's one of the safer tasks in the wilderness. I didn't see a single other player here because it's simply not a hotspot for PKers. And then you have the rest of the tasks like Magic Access, Ice Warriors, Rogues, all the Giant Moss, Fire, Hill, and so on, which I just run through with Expeditious Bracelet or just block them, and if I have points over, I just skip them immediately. I would highly recommend you take advantage of the Slaughter and Expeditious Bracelets, as they cost almost nothing, and in a long run they can save you up to like million Slayer experience. Because every time you don't want to do a task, the Expeditious Bracelet makes your task 25% faster, and the opposite is with Slaughter Bracelet that makes your task 25% longer. So you can always squeeze more out of the good tasks and make the awful Slayer tasks faster. Added with the fact that you constantly get blighted food and super restores, which allows you to continue doing tasks without spending your own supplies. And with the looting bag, it ensures that you never have to bank during the task. Another item I would recommend buying is the Teleport Anchoring Scroll, or if you're patient enough, you will get that yourself during your zombie pirate tasks. It makes Abyssal Demons incredibly fast, and it turns them into one of the best tasks on the entire list. Overall, I feel like if you're comfortable dying in the wilderness and you don't mind the small setback it causes, there is nothing better than training Slayer in the wilderness. It offers you so much variety in loot, experience, supplies, the fact that every task allows you to use cannon, the amount of points you can earn, which allows you to basically always choose your own task, and the fact that it's the best way to get imbued heart on your account. I say give it a try, see if you like it, and then continue the grind if you do. Now look, if you play RuneScape like you have a full-time job and a family to provide for, this video is for you. Obviously you missed out on some of that juicy fun fact dopamine, and to fix that I have some great old school RuneScape trivia that you probably never even heard of. Like, did you know that there is a Runelite plugin that allows you to change Gauntlet to any color you want? For me personally, the bright red color is about as fun as gas station hamburgers, so I decided to make mine a little bit more tame on the eyes. You can change the minigame to any color you want, and you can download the plugin under CG Recolor, which is available to everyone. And if you're a real psychopath, you can make it even more red, which I personally don't recommend. Or there is this nifty little trick to maximize your AFK runecrafting training, and that is 2-click Blood Rune Altar method. Once you have enough dense blocks in your inventory, your first click should be on this tile. Then make sure you have activated maximum draw distance on Runelite, tag the Blood Altar, and the second click gives you about 1 minute of AFK running towards the altar. One of the easiest way to train runecrafting in the entire game, and it gives you roughly 40,000 experience per hour. While Gothic Slaves was just released, so I wanted to show you some funny and maybe a little useful tips you can take advantage of. Firstly, the Emberlight can be used in Nightmare Zone and quite efficiently. There are a total of 6 demons you can pick from. One is one is Black Demon, then we have Akrit Nar, we got the Jungle Demon, the Bouncer, and finally Skeleton Hellhound. It's actually quite good experience, and for certain monsters, it's even better DPS than weapons like Soul Reaper Axe. And since Emberlight doesn't have any charges, you can do this infinitely. It does work with 2 other Demon Bane weapons weapons as well, but Emberlight is best in slot here. So if you want new strategy for AFK in Nightmare Zone and you already have the Emberlight acquired, this is really good alternative. The second thing I want to show you is the Elite Black Armor, because it actually gives you plus 18 prayer bonus, which is on par with the Proselyte armor, and it has somewhat similar defensive stats as well. So if you need another armor for your prayer bonus, this is a good option to have. And finally, we all know you can't take weapons into Entrana, but the 2 parts of Bone Claw don't act as a weapon, so you can take them separately into Entrana and then just attach them together to make one of the most powerful weapons you can have on this island. I already mentioned one 40,000 experience an hour AFK method, but here is another one. This time it's agility, and with the recent Brimhaven course changes, there is now an incredibly relaxing agility training method that also gives roughly 40,000 experience. Firstly, the requirements are 20 agility and few coins. That's it. The method itself is extremely easy. Just place your camera in the right angle so that you can jump over these paths and then just start clicking away. This is basically like thieving Ardenites, but for agility. I would recommend using a foot pedal, especially if you're giga old, because we know those hands aren't getting any younger. You don't have to do anything else, and this method does give up to 42,000 experience an hour with 0 effort. If you have Karamja Medium Diary completed, all the obstacles in this course also give you extra 10% experience. So make sure you have that completed as well if you want more. If your agility level is still low, you will fail the course occasionally. The recommended food here is Summer Pies, since they heal you for 22 hit points and boost your agility level by +5. Next up, let's take a few minutes to talk about Runelite plugins that will save your life. Number 1 is a plugin called Area Mute, and what it does is mute one single chunk on the entire map. So for example, if you want to mute only the Grand Exchange, you just open up your minimap, right click the GE chunk and choose Mute Region. As soon as you step out of the chunk, the mute disappears and it only applies to this chunk. There is also alternative plugin called Combat Level Muting, which mutes everyone based on their combat level. So if you just want to get rid of this annoying level 3 bots in GE, you can pick that option, which allows you to still see chat from higher combat players. This also works very well in Winterdot, because hearing the same political or racist statements from new level 3 Ironmans gets exhausting real fast. Next one is something you probably already heard, but there is a better way to utilize it. Inventory tags. Something that players definitely have a love-hate relationship. Now most people use it to tag their gear, but there are other methods for this. For example, all the clue scroll steps have their own individual IDs, so you can use this plugin to only tag clue steps that are, for example, in Wilderness. That means every time you get a Wilderness clue step, your clue scroll will shine bright. If you're a big fan of clue scrolls, this helps you solve them much faster. Or another great use is for pickpocketed master farmers. You can use inventory tag only for the seeds you want and drop everything else, or vice versa. Now, we all know that old school RuneScape is fun, because people will spend thousands of hours to play the game as little as possible. And that is what this next plugin will help you do as well. It's all about that sweet rush of dopamine. Me level up, me happy. And that is what the Prestige plugin does. Let's say you're 92 mining and you want to get 99. Well, you can reset your levels with Prestige, so it starts counting from level 1 again. So instead of going from level 92 to 99, you are doing 1 to 92 twice. You get more level ups, more dopamine, and your brain is like, yeah, sure, this is fun. There is also a quick little Swifty plugin called Unbotted Reminder. I can't say how many times this has happened to me. I do a Slayer task, I've killed about 50 creatures, and suddenly I realized I haven't even botted up yet. This plugin reminds you to drink your boost potions when you have them with you in your inventory. And finally, this is something from me personally, but lately I've been doing a lot of master clues, because I just keep getting every type of clue during my Slayer task, and one thing that bothered me was always going for Watson and checking in which clues I already handed in. But there is a plugin called Watson Clue Tracker, which basically does it for you. Just type into chat ::Watson and it tells you exactly what clues you already handed over to him. Saves you time and saves you brain cells. And since we're already talking about Watson, he also sells this item called Stash Scroll. You can put this scroll into your POH and it allows you to check how many stash units you have filled out and how many there are left. It also allows you to see all their location, so you can easily find the ones that still need filling. Also, side note, I noticed that over 80% of my viewers are simply not subscribed. So if you want to see more content like this, consider hitting that red button to not miss out on the next video. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about something else now. I have recently started bossing again, and one of the things that really bothers me is getting God Wars KC before entering the room. But there is a way to guarantee 5 ecumenical keys in less than 15 minutes, which saves you so much time. And basically what you're doing is just bursting the monsters inside the Wilderness God Wars dungeon. All you have to do is make sure you don't have any god items equipped to ensure that the monsters are always aggro towards you no matter what. Secondly, blood spells are needed here as you will take quite a lot of damage. This method is about 3 times more efficient than just killing the imps and ice fiends. Alternatively, there is another method where you bring a blowpipe and serp helm and just tag every single monster in the room, which guarantees that they start taking venom damage and then just focus on the imps and ice fiends. And the extra benefit is that you're almost always guaranteed to get at least 1 medium and 1 hard clue while doing this grind. Both methods are somewhat equal and it saves so much time if you're doing Nex, Saradomin or Armadale God Wars. Also, side note, there is a site called oldschool.gg, which basically has loot trackers for every single activity in the game. Raids, bosses, clue scrolls, minigames, skills, you name it. And this site allows you to see roughly the estimate of your loot. Since I'm currently doing a lot of God Wars like mentioned, I curiously wanted to see my luck in Saradomin and how much money I would make if I killed like 500 Ciliana. The loot tracker showed roughly 195 million GP, which honestly was incredibly lucky, but it just gives you some perspective on what you might expect to see. And since we're on the topic of pages, if you want to waste your time, there is a webpage called Rune Daily that allows you to essentially play a few miscellaneous guessing games about old school RuneScape. And there's also another RuneScape minigame called RuneShape, where you have to guess the item based on its shape. Like for example, this one is Pestle and Mortar. I'll leave a link in the description for all those games if you want to try them yourself. Okay, let's get back to old school RuneScape now and do a small speed fire round. I'm gonna give you 6 facts in 60 seconds. Being hit with a mod pipe by another player reduces your run energy by 25%, but if you equip ranged tank armor, the accuracy of mod pipes are lowered. If you get hit by multiple mod pipes, your run energy will go to 0%. If you have Dust plus Steam plus Law plus Nature runes in your rune pouch and you're on a normal spellbook, it will give you access to all teleports in the spellbook plus give you High Alks and Bone to Beach spells. This is really good for certain Slayer tasks and clue scrolls. Currently, Cooked Antelope is the highest single click food in the game, healing you for a total of 26 hit points. And it will also slightly cure your venom or poison at the same time. There are a total of 3 toilets in the world of Gielinor. One is Watson's house, although inaccessible. One is nearby the Sidious Winery and it's been occupied since release, and one is in the museum camp near Fossil Island. There is also a shit bucket in the Korak dungeon cell, which by some is counted as a toilet. There is a spell called Boost Potion Share, which allows one player to use potions like Super Combat on their entire team. The spell can be cast once and uses a single dose while giving the effect of Super Combat Potion to 4 players in total. If you love to use Blowpipe, consider using Rune Darts instead of Amethyst because they are much cheaper and you're only sacrificing +2 range strength over it. And finally, you can make your own garlic bread by combining baguette with olive oil for dose potion and some garlic to make a brand new food that heals you for 16 hit points. This is extremely helpful in Theater of Blood against vampires, and most importantly, I actually made that part up, but honestly it would be pretty awesome to have garlic bread. It's amazing. I can't believe we still don't have it in game. Okay, jokes aside, I have one more thing to show you and I left the best one for the last. The current world record for Infernal speedrun was just broken again and a player named Rastaman just achieved the first ever sub 40-minute Infernal run. This is an incredibly amazing achievement, and just for comparison, the second best run is roughly 4 minutes behind. Just to put into perspective, the average run for Inferno is roughly about 90 minutes to 2 hours and most speedrunners end up around 50 minutes. So to get a time of 39 minutes and 47 seconds is something that will likely never be beaten again. And that is everything I have to offer for you. If you made it this far into the video, that means you are either my biggest hero or you have already fallen asleep. And I'll take both, honestly. If you're hearing this right now, please do consider subscribing to the channel as it helps me make more entertaining videos for you specifically, and there is nothing more I want to do in this world than make RuneScape videos. But that's it. I'm gonna sign off this 3-hour video one final time. I thank you so much for watching this video and I'll see you all tomorrow with another one. I love you all very much. Bye.